I will call the June 2nd recommending committee meeting to order. For those of you who parked across the street, I don't know if our new solar panels are up if you're on the top floor, but it's very exciting. We will have cooler parking up on the roof. But if in fact you parked in the garage across the street and did not validate your ticket when you leave, or if there's a break, please go outside to the clerk's office and they will validate your parking ticket. Okay. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law? Thank you very much. Let's see. If moved out of the committee today, bill numbers 2014-31 and 2014-32 will be eligible for adoption at the June 18th council meeting. And that is if moved out of committee today. The remaining bills number 2014-34 and 2014-33, will be eligible for adoption at the June 4th council meeting, which is the day after tomorrow. So this is all dependent upon moving out of committee today. Good morning.
How are you, Mayor?
I am well, thank you. Welcome. So now we're full seated. Okay, bill number 2014-13 for possible action adopts as the city's fire code, the International Fire Code 2012 edition, together with local modifications and supplements thereto. This is proposed by Chief William L. McDonald, Chief of Fire and Rescue. Purpose and background: this bill will be adopted at the city's fire code, the International Fire Code 2013 edition, as amended by two additional documents: the Southern Nevada Amendments, area-wide consensus provisions, and a supplemental document containing amendments particular to the city of Las Vegas. This bill should be submitted to a recommending committee for review, hearing, and recommendation to the City Council for final action. Is the Chief here?
Mayor, he is not. This is just basically just an adoption of the new 2012 fire code from the 2009.
Okay, I think we're all right with that. Okay, we have some questions, please. Go ahead.
Who is going to answer? Thank you, Mayor. Who's going to answer on behalf of the fire department? Oops. There were only a couple of questions I had, and I was told that a couple of changes were made, Orlando. It had to do with a requirement that's been deemed onerous by a lot of people, and that is that when we have these repurposed old buildings especially, and we have food service in a building that could be a garage or something like, could have been, and anything, and or an old apartment building, we have food service, and this applies to new buildings too, where you have food service and no heating, no cooking, no flames, no anything, just serving of foods. If there's an overhang of some kind, I mean, it could be very minor, like a trellis, or it could be, I suppose even umbrellas, I'm not sure. We are requiring people to put fire sprinklering out there where the food is served, and I just feel like we had that problem with Rachel's Kitchen on Ogden, where they weren't cooking, but there was housing there. And so I could understand the fire department's position, and I think we left that in there. But in the case where you're not talking about housing, there's all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't have to sprinkler an area where there's no heat sources or anything other than serving prepared foods. And I need to make sure on the record that that has been taken out.
If you look at, I think on page 12 of 319.4, that talks about all the cooking and food warming, but it's in exhibition spaces only. Do you have this?
Which page?
This is, well, that doesn't seem like page 12.
Our pages are different.
Yep, and this is the second grouping, so hold on, please.
Are you in the weed or are you in the fire?
I'm into the fire.
Okay.
Well, certainly that, does that, my question would be, Councilman, they may turn the building to someone else, in which case it has not been retrofitted and it may not be in the best interest of the building. I mean, it should be in compliance with code regardless of the use of the building. Are you going to then say that the new owners don't have to have it retrofitted for sprinklers, and then when they sell again, they'll have to come
Would
forward
be
to do it?
a condition of licensing, would be that if there is food prep, cooking and so on, then you'd have to retrofit, is my way of thinking. Because we definitely require retrofitting on the inside,
Yes,
above the
without
ovens, all that
question.
stuff.
Right.
We're very safe in that regard. I just think maybe we ought to pass on this bill until fire sends somebody, Your Honor.
Mayor?
Yes,
We
please.
are trying to get hold of the fire chief to see if he can come down, so maybe we can just table this till he gets here?
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will do that. We will now move on to,
He may be up in the other room, too. He
he's
might be in
probably
the
up in
conference
another
room.
building too, or briefing. Okay. This is agenda item 4, bill number 2014-32 for possible action, updates LVMC Title 11 pertaining generally to vehicles and traffic, to repeal obsolete provisions, make corrections and revisions deemed necessary or appropriate, proposed by Orlando Sanchez, Deputy City Manager. And this bill will update the LVMC Title 11 to, just as I read, to repeal obsolete provisions, make corrections and revisions deemed necessary or appropriate. The bill comes forward as part of the ongoing project designed to identify and update obsolete and duplicative code provisions. And I think, Val Steed, you've been working on that forever and will continue to do so. So we'll have a motion to do that. Excuse me?
I was wondering who's going to give us testimony.
Orlando.
Basically, Mayor, this is just to, our update that the mayor charged us with to go out there and review all city ordinances to see that they're still relevant and remove the obsolete language from our code. If there's any questions, Val or myself, or Bill will answer any.
Okay, we'll take public hearing on this. Anyone who wishes to comment? And we are on Bill 2014-32 for anyone who's just walking in the door. Okay, hearing none.
Move for approval.
I have questions.
We have a question. Councilman Coffin, please.
Thank you.
Yes?
Yeah, my questions relate to change that's occurring particularly downtown. This might not be in any area other ward, but maybe wards 1, 3, and 5. This might not be a concern, but I'm curious, since we are modifying who can ride a bicycle, where they can ride, tricycles, also food delivery and so on, are we in any way inhibiting, through the passage of these changes, the ability for us to continue to allow new, innovative things? That's redundant, but anyway, you know what I mean.
Councilman Jorge Cervantes, Executive Director for Community Services. We are inhibiting it. Most of the changes here are related to parking enforcement, parking meters. Now that we've got the multi-bay meters, our codes didn't apply to that, only applied for single meters. So most of the changes are related to parking enforcement. In particular to the bicycles and different vehicles, we actually set up a committee of Barrie industry representatives, the trike folks, the pedicabs, all them, to come up with wording and ordinances for a separate ordinance that addresses where these vehicles can and couldn't be. And so our traffic engineer's been meeting with them. They've had 2 meetings so far and are continuing to meet to develop an ordinance that addresses all these type of vehicles and their use.
I think I can live with that. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have an accidental consequence. I'm a little worried, Your Honor, this is the second department. We don't have anybody from parking out here. We're talking about parking. And
Vehicles and traffic, so
Yeah,
really, I
it
think
falls
that's
under
Susan's
traffic
case.
engineer, and I talked to Brandy this morning. She's in Dallas, so I told her I'd answer any questions specific to the need. But again, it's mainly adjusting the old codes to deal with new parking issues, parking regulations. The transition of parking going over to economic and urban development, that's addressed in these changes, mainly cleanup items.
Well, and I think, too, this is all related to what we asked legal to do, to review all old codes and get rid of all the ones that are out of date or update them as necessary.
That's correct, and that's all it's doing.
all right, I'll support the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, there's a motion to approve, and please vote. We can do this. Are we going to post up, too? Wonderful. Would you please post? And that carries. Thank you very much. You'll let me know when you see the chief, please.
Well, he's about
Okay.
6'6", and somehow or
Well, we
another,
never know which
he's
door.
absolutely unmistakable.
Okay. Okay, this is Bill number 2014-34 for possible action, ordinance amending MC 6.02 to increase civil penalties for violations of LVMC 6.50 and clarifying that the director may suspend an alcoholic beverage license on an administrative basis under certain circumstances, adding a new condition to LVMC 6.50 to clarify that a license's violation or knowingly permitting an employee to violate a condition of an alcoholic beverage license is a misdemeanor, and creating a zone in the downtown area with possession of glass or metal containers for the consumption of beverages is prohibited, and the consumption of alcoholic beverages in its original packaging is prohibited, and to provide for other related matters. This is proposed by legal Brad Jerbick, city attorney. And so, do you want, who would make any comments here? Ms. Duddleston, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, Karen Duddleston, licensing manager. I can give you a summary, but the summary you read is exactly
What you're
what the
saying.
bill does, and I don't believe there's any other provisions in there.
Okay, anyone in the public who would like to speak to this issue, please come forward. And do state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Terry Murphy, 516 South 6th Street, here on behalf of Fremont Street Experience and the D. With me is Pam Erickson, who is a national expert on alcohol and alcohol-related issues. Because we're exploring these issues over a period of time, we thought it would be good to bring in someone who has a wealth of experience. So I'm going to let her address some of the issues related to packaged liquor specifically, but I also want to stand here and say on behalf of our organizations, we support this wholeheartedly. We understand that there's going to be a cost and an operational impact on needing to serve in the plastic, but we are fine with that because the issue has become overwhelming to us. We've also noticed that the ordinance that was adopted a few weeks ago, some of the places are not yet in compliance with it. They're still selling singles, they still have the signs, so we really are in support of the penalties as well. And so I'd like Pam to address, if with your permission,
Please.
Your Honor,
Please.
just a few things, and she's going to provide you some written testimony as well. And why don't you
Morning.
talk about your qualifications?
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here and speak to you on this important issue. First of all, I want to commend the city.
Would you repeat your name for us?
My name
and
is
your
Pamela
affiliation?
Erickson.
And your affiliation, your company?
My company is called Public Action Management. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm a former alcohol regulator. For 7 years, I was the chief regulator for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. And in that capacity, I also operated package stores. Oregon is what's called a control state, where the state owns the spirits business. So I operated 240 package stores throughout the state, so I'm very familiar with that business. I'm somebody who left being a regulator and joined the prevention community, and there I became an even greater fan of our alcohol regulatory system because I became acquainted with all of the research that supports what we do to regulate alcohol in this country. We actually have a very effective alcohol regulatory system, and it stacks up very well in comparison to other countries. Europe, for example, has much greater problems with alcohol. They have a looser system of control, and we do a lot better. So I'm here to bring you some information about alcohol regulation and what it does, and then give my assessment of some of the problems that you're experiencing with your entertainment venue.
And would you give our city clerk a copy of your veto when you have it
I've got
available?
copies of
Great, thank you.
my qualifications and testimony.
Thank
I
you.
also brought copies of some of my reports. My expertise is explaining alcohol regulation in simple terms. Alcohol regulation is very, very complicated, and even as a regulator, I didn't always understand it. So there needs to be an effort to really explain why we have these things that may seem kind of ridiculous sometimes. First of all, let me say that alcohol regulations are designed to foster public health and safety. That is the number one priority. And certainly you will have concerns about public health and safety in in the Fremont Street experience. The safety of your citizens is really the paramount concern. And oftentimes we get a little blasé about alcohol and forget about the harm that it causes. The Centers for Disease Control estimate that 88,000 people die every year due to alcohol. Some of those are deaths on the highway due to drunk driving, diseases such as liver cirrhosis, and those kinds of things. So we need to be reminded that alcohol, if misused, can be very harmful. Let me just briefly talk about what the research says about alcohol regulation. First of all, we have very good research that says if you have too many outlets in a small area, that invariably creates problems. That is very well researched, and that's something that we need to be concerned about, having too many outlets in a small area. Second thing is that probably the most powerful control over alcohol is price. When price goes down, drinking goes up. It's very, very well researched. And that's one of the things that the designers of our alcohol control system were very cognizant about, because before Prohibition and right after Prohibition, there were a lot of price wars that drove excess consumption and problems. So price is very, very important, and it's important to balance price. You don't want the highest possible price. We've seen what happens when that occurs in Washington State, where privatization drove prices way, way high and increased theft by a very large margin. We also have tighter control over more dangerous products. Products that are high alcohol content oftentimes are in specialty stores only, like they did in Oregon. Promotion and advertising extend the accessibility of alcohol, promote price wars, deep discounts, and that kind of thing. Let me talk a little bit about my experience with these kinds of venues. Oregon has lots and lots of public events, lots and lots of public venues, so we had a lot of experience, both good and bad, with public events. We eventually developed a comprehensive regulation for all events and annual facilities that had over 2,000 attendees. This covered all of the aspects of operation because they're unusual venues. They are not the standard on-premise, off-premise types of licenses, and so you need special rules. And I would say that you are learning that with the Fremont Street experience, that it's not your garden variety store or bar. It's a collective, cooperative arrangement where you have shared responsibility. That's very, very different. And let me talk about the two different types of licenses, because I think that's creating a problem here. The on-premise licensee is responsible for selling alcohol, maintaining regulations, don't sell to kids, don't sell to people who are intoxicated, but the drinking is to take place on the premise, and so the licensee is responsible for the behavior of all the patrons. The server is very critical in that respect. The server has to keep watch over what's going on. A lot of times we're very concerned about dark places, for example, because the server can't see what's going on. So the on-premise licensee has a lot of responsibility for the customers while they stay in the premise. The off-sale or off-premise licensee only is responsible for what happens in the store. They don't have an extended premise. So certainly they're not to sell to intoxicated people or to those underage, but once that patron goes outside the door, their responsibility really ends. And I think that's a problem with the Fremont Street experience because you've got package stores that are operating like an on-premise. I've spent a lot of time these last couple of days observing what goes on there, and I've witnessed sale of single cans or bottles, and right outside the store the person opens it and starts drinking. Yet the package store has no responsibility for those patrons. So you've got the bars that maintain the responsibility for the patrons. And the way Oregon did it and the way you seem to be doing it is you have extra security that kind of extends the eyes of the server. The server can't see what's happening 2 blocks down if a patron takes their drink and walks down the street, but your security people there supplement that duty. The package store has no responsibility for their patrons. They, once they leave the store because the general idea was that they buy the product, take it to a private location and consume it at their home, to a party, to some other private location, not drinking out in the street. And I think that's where you've got some problems. You also have deep discounting in some of the package stores that is fueling a lot of excess consumption, I'm afraid. So those are things to be concerned about. When we had a place that got under control, we would establish a compliance plan that got people back on track, and then once things calmed down, we were able to loosen the regulations again. So you might want to consider something like that. But I certainly wouldn't add any additional outlets to the area. You've got probably more than you can control easily. Restrictions on days and hours of sale. Some of these things may have to happen if you run into significant public safety problems. Let me just add a word about enforcement. You can have all the laws you want, but if you don't enforce them, they're not going to do much good. When I first became a regulator, the laws against sale to minors were completely unenforced, and a 15-year-old kid could just go buy their own booze. We learned that we had to enforce those laws. It created some problems with the industry who felt picked on, but we took great pains to be very fair. And once we were able to establish that we were fair and even-handed, but we had to enforce these laws, it became well accepted. And I think that it's very important to enforce your regulations fairly but firmly and with a certain amount of regularity. You can't just drop in every 2 years and enforce them. That will not work very well. So enforcement is very important. In conclusion, I think the city has a great investment here. It's a truly unique venue. It is a great service to your citizens who have the opportunity to see live entertainment at low cost. It's really a fabulous idea, and I hope that I can be as helpful as I can to help you deal with some of the issues that you have. But these are solvable things. These are not impossible. And I look forward to a very positive outcome for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to ask questions of Ms. Erickson? You know, one of the things that, when you were speaking, and knowing New Jersey is also a state alcohol locale, everything's regulated by the state, and they have state liquor stores.
Yeah.
And coming from back in that area. I think one of the things is we're moving forward and considering these plastic containers. I think what it really suggests to us, among other things, is that our cleanup has to be immediate, because I can just see hands taking throwaway cups, taking them home, and now you've got your own plastic cups, which then you can go into the store, still buy it, and use that. So there, and maybe the cups, and I mean, this is really getting picayune, but maybe the cups should be dated.
We've been thinking about that. I thank you, Mayor. If I might just first thank Ms. Erickson for coming. The reason we brought her was because the issues are so broad. You're really doing a good job starting to enforce, to recognize and create the regulations. I see ways out of the cup thing. If the stores start to sell cups, we've witnessed as late as last week, all of them are telling people, yeah, you can drink this on the mall. You can't drink it in the store, but yes, you can open it outside. We all know that's not true. We've spent a year working on this, yet the message has not gotten through. So we're hoping to maybe add, I don't know if you can add it today, but at a future time, add something where the employees are not permitted to tell the people that they're allowed to drink it on the mall, even though we all know that's the law. The primary thing I wanted to have Ms. Erickson explain is that there really is a difference between, and she did a great job, thank you so much, between liquor by the drink and packaged liquor, and that historically the package license, the off-sale license, was meant to go in, to buy it, and go consume it in private, not to be an extension of a tavern. And that those licenses don't require the kinds of things a tavern license requires. They don't have a TAM card. They don't have all those other things. The other issue is, as you all know, Fremont Street Experience and the hotel spend a significant amount of money on security inside and outside, and on cleanup. We're cleaning up the refuse from the packaged liquor stores. So I think today's step is a very, very good one. I think we're learning as we go, and we may need some tweaks to that as well. And there was a good meeting this morning on enforcement, so I think everybody's kind of getting the picture and working together, and we've taken some very good steps. We probably have a few more to take, but on behalf of all my clients, I thank you very much for taking the lead.
Oh, we appreciate it, and I appreciate your coming, but personally, I think it's unreasonable, and especially listening now to Mrs. Erickson, most owners of shops are required to be in control of what goes on in the shop once they're out in a public area, which our canopy suggests to the visitor. If you expect something to happen, you have to inspect it, and I think the key to all of this is to beef up our observation and our security, whether it's from the private venue or it's the city or it's Metropolitan Police Department, because the reality is there are just so many employees, and on a big weekend or on a very busy time, they're all doing something, and for them to be going out onto the experience and having to monitor, oh my gosh, did that person just buy from me, or who did he buy from? I think it's not reasonable to expect that.
But that's why we have the Fremont Street Experience employs a significant security force of its own to monitor
Right.
that. But monitoring, as these package outlets were added, A, obviously we protested each one, but B, we didn't feel, it's difficult for us to control the actions from the other licensees. We can't.
We have to be reasonable in the expectations of these private packaged liquor stores, in my opinion, and I really do think, you've had that experience, and I think most people do understand that You are responsible for what goes on your store and the conduct of your employees and exactly what happens. But once out in that bigger mall, I think the private sector and the experience and the city and the county have to take a more aggressive control over that and not depend on the owners of the stores.
Correct.
Yes, and we
Because
have
they can't either. The law states that you can't consume, but the consumer doesn't know that.
Right.
So,
And the issue
so
too.
it
with-
becomes the responsibility of
But the other
owner
issue is
to do
that, I mean, we want to be tourist-friendly. We want people to come down. As we all know, there are other issues with which we're dealing under the canopy, which we'll get a hold of as well. But I think the key right now is to be as realistic, and you're hearing a confirmation of the expectation. You cannot expect the owners of these private establishments to hire somebody just to be monitoring who's going in and out of their store, maybe 3 and 4 times. So I just think it's something the county, the police and marshals and the private sector and security needs to do it.
Sure. The other important thing was the studies on price. Obviously, when you have a privilege license where you're required to have at least 200 rooms and all of the amenities that a gaming license is required to have, there's a certain expense to that, and you're going to comply with that. When a gaming control agent walks into your establishment, you can't tell him he needs to leave, or I don't care if I'm complying, you'll lose your license. In the package stores, you don't have any of those requirements, so your operating cost is so much less that you can charge less. Liquor by the drink is very expensive. A can of beer or a can of Four Loko or whatever they're selling there, it's 2 for $5. So the pricing component was also the very important thing. Well, unless anyone has any
Even in the good
questions.
old days on the Strip, you go from one hotel to the other, the prices varied, and people would know that, and that's why they choose the Dunes over the Riviera or another hotel. It's part of our
Correct, but
competition.
they're all on the same level playing field. The hotels all have the same regulations that they have to comply with. The stores are gift shops with an ancillary license, so that's,
But it made sense that they were going to go ahead and get into a competitive war on pricing. It just made sense that it would come.
sure, but that's what drives,
Right.
anyway.
Councilman?
We're done.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm going to pick up on where you left off. I just want to make sure it isn't seen, any actions we take place are not seen as artificially propping up the price of liquor in order to assist the casinos in sales.
No.
Because obviously, we want some competition in price. It's a question of the decorum and certainly the behavior on the mall that's of most concern. Am I hearing
Yes, but you can.
you are in agreement, I hope?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. But I guess what I'm saying is, when the level of regulation is so small, that artificially deflates the price. And so other communities have controlled the social ills associated with the
I understand this. What
availability.
we've tried to do over the years is we've resisted dram shop legislation, which would then require the seller of liquor, regardless of the venue, to be responsible for the behavior of the person outside their area of control. And for practical reasons, we've consistently rejected those bills. But let me ask, I need to ask our staff question. The drafters, hello. Okay, I have a question. Yeah, I know he's not listening.
Did you want Orlando or Mr. Steve?
Well, whoever's proposing the bill, let's see, it's probably staff, anybody who wants to
Val,
answer
Steve,
this.
if
Val,
you
what's the
would.
effective date of this bill? Signing and then publishing?
If it were to be adopted on Wednesday, it would be published on Saturday and would be effective on Sunday.
Okay. See, I'm worried about some of the immediacy of some of the bills, and not because I think that the problem isn't needing an immediate situation, but it's a solution. But we have even pushed back from the 12 days ago, the action we took, because it's practical to allow retailers of any kind to dispose of the inventory that they have. I was on the mall again, I think Thursday night, and I saw, naturally singles for sale and the other kinds of things. And it occurred to me that we probably moved so fast in publishing that and making it effective that, in fact, you have a lot of people with a lot of inventory investment, and they can't get rid of it right away. And So I see, again, we've got an immediate inaction of this, which now calls for misdemeanor penalties for these things. And I'm just thinking we need to be very careful not to force this down people's throats so fast that they can't adjust. So there's going to be expense and maybe a search for inventory to find plastic containered goods. And maybe everything that's in inventory today is available in plastic, but I don't know that. I do know, though, that we should be allowing people a sufficient amount of time to get rid of, not an excessive amount of time, practical amount of time, to get rid of their metal containers and their glass containers. And that doesn't, the effective date here wouldn't do that. So we need to get our heads around something that's practical. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions, 30 days, 60 days, whatever. There needs to be a day when you would say probably in the normal course of events you would have consumed that inventory or found a wholesaler to take it back.
Or they would just go ahead and sell it as it was intended to be, to use off-site and off the premises of the Fremont Street Experience. And they don't have to reduce anything. They have their metal container 6-pack, and I don't think it's a problem.
Well, but see, now we're
Except for the
talking
ones
about,
that we're
now we're
banning.
talking about, we're going further and we're also making it a criminal penalty. We're not civil anymore. And we have to make sure our behavior's civil, but our enforcement now becomes criminal. And
We've been discussing these regulations for a year, actually, and many of them signed an agreement many months ago.
Terry, I understand that. I just want to know, what is a practical aspect of this?
I don't know.
You don't know. And I think we should allow a few weeks for people to dispose of their inventory. I think that it just makes sense. These are small businesses. They know this is coming, but I don't want to be so draconian that we force them. They're going to lose sales.
Could
You know,
I,
based on that ordinance and this ordinance. They're going to lose some sales.
let's hear from Ms. Duddleston,
Yeah.
please.
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager, and I'll ask our attorney to clarify. As I read this, it says within this area, it is unlawful for a person to consume any alcoholic beverage. It does not affect what is sold there.
I couldn't hear you.
The ordinance, as I read it on page 3, 10.77030, it is unlawful for a person to consume any alcoholic beverage in its original packaging, and it is unlawful for a person to be on public property in possession of glass or metal. It does not address the sale of what can be sold in a packaged liquor store, and I'll ask the city attorney to correct me if I'm incorrect.
No, that's right. I think the councilman is just saying if you're selling something that you might be in possession of after you buy it, it's a problem. I think
Yeah,
that's what he
right.
said.
See, so you're not drinking it, Your Honor. You're not consuming it illegally. You're just taking it out of the store, and it might have a metal container or glass container, and you're not going to drink it on the mall. You're not going to do this or that. But in fact, you've just broken the law by going out there with that inventory. And I was just thinking, rather than
No, I don't think that is not a misdemeanor. If you don't open it, you are just taking it from there
With the
and
mere
going to your
possession.
room.
But he just said the mere possession of it requires that.
Can we get some
Well,
clarification?
page 3,
Mere possession.
page 3, the top of the page, within lines 3 through 6, within that discrete area, it's unlawful for a person to be on public property in possession of. That's what it says.
Yeah. So it means it could have been sold with all intents to observation of the law, and yet as you're walking to your vehicle or to your hotel room or some other location and or taking it home or to your apartment to consume it, you're actually breaking the law to take it there. So I'm just saying that I think to avoid this kind of conflict, you take a little time and give a few weeks to get rid of the inventory instead of a day or two.
I'm a little confused now, because based on this finding, which is absolutely correct, which you've read there, what is wrong with my going into a packaged liquor store and buying a 6-pack or a bottle of whatever, of wine, to take it back later on to my room or put it in my car for consumption later on? I am not opening it. I think the key is open. Why should they have to get rid of their inventory if the intent and purpose of the liquor, the packaged liquor, is to use it away and use it in a room, and that's why I'm buying it there, and it's not open, what's wrong with it?
Well, certainly this would make it wrong.
Well, this is
Yeah,
true,
this
this is finable. So, what do you say, how now there? Both Mr. Fagg and Ms. Duffelston? Sorry, I know you're looking at it. But if the intent of the packaged liquor has always been that you sell it to consume it in your room or go somewhere away, that is the intent and purpose of what was originally there. So why should that be fined if people are abiding by the law and taking their six-pack or their bottle or whatever out of the store, not opening it, and going off Fremont Street, and it's not open?
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager, that was our understanding of the intent of this. That's why I would defer to the city attorney on what these words in line 3 through 6, what their purpose was. Our understanding from the direction of the downtown group meetings was that it was the consumption of glass from glass and metal containers that was the issue.
So it's an open something. Maybe if we add the word open?
It might be clearer if that is the intent for the possession of any glass or metal container, or to consume from any glass or metal container.
See, it's already in the ordinances, and I'm not sure exactly where sometimes we don't put the entire ordinance.
Mayor Goodman? I don't know what the intent of that subsection A is, but I do know that it borrows from existing language that pertained to 4th of July, New Year's Eve, that talked about both possession and consumption. So if the desire is to make it less broad than that, and I'm hearing that there is, we can certainly revise subsection A to either take it out or do less than what it proposes to do. It was just a transfer of the language that already exists that you see on the bottom half of that page that was the way that we addressed those particular occasions downtown.
Okay, we're going to hear from authority at this moment. Please state your name.
Sean Anderson, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Downtown Area Command. I believe that language was put in place from an officer safety perspective, officer safety. The crowds have become, as of late, such great numbers that we have an environment on the weekends that is not much different than the 4th of July or New Year's Eve. And bottles and glasses commonly become weapons. And we can't get them picked up quick enough to where they're not a threat. That language is placed in there after talking with the city attorney's office to make it a little bit safer place for my folks to work.
In the discussions we had in those meetings, though, when you look at the pure intent of the original stores as they opened and were licensed to sell packaged liquor and bottled alcohol, it was always the intent that we were buying that product to take it off campus and back to a room. If it is not used and not opened and done for that purpose, how can you, and these are questions that I just need clarification, penalize with a fine someone who is specifically addressing what we set up originally, that the purpose of these packaged liquor stores would be allowing them to buy it and take it away and not use it not open it, not drink it, but absolutely in its original container, take it away.
Well, I think that was the intent, but that's not the reality. The majority of the packaged liquor that's being bought from the souvenir shops on the Fremont Street Experience are not being taken back to hotel rooms. They're not being taken back home. Last year, my officers, along with business licensing, in November, went down to the Fremont Street Experience, and over the course of 2 nights, watched people enter and exit the souvenir shops. And the first night we went out, we watched 700 people violate this law, and the following night, we watched 700 more people do it. It's rampant. We've got a difficult environment for law enforcement down there. We've got two very different sets of businesses. We've got one that's selling alcohol that can be consumed legally in that area, and another group of businesses that are selling something thousands of times a night that can't be consumed legally on the Fremont Street Experience.
So
The
could that
bottles-
just be, can we add just the word open? Because what I'm hearing from councilmen, the hotels don't sell six-packs to take out. So if we just said open, because everyone that violated the law deserves to be fined. But for those who really are following the purpose of this packaged liquor being sold, to go in to take it somewhere off Fremont Street and take it to their room or whatever they're doing.
The city's attorney's office can speak to this with greater detail, but anything that makes this, then what do we define as open? Something
Drinking it
that is
open.
that is open without a top, or something that is open but closed? It just muddies the water.
Original container.
Part of the issue that we have down there, and it's not just for law enforcement, but it's for the people who live here and visit here, is the rules are confusing. You can't go into a liquor store. How many of us go into a liquor store or convenience store and read the signs that are posted as to who should drink and who shouldn't drink and where we can and where we can't? That doesn't occur. We need a bright line so that when we take law enforcement action against people, it's the right thing to do. We don't want to be writing a ticket to somebody that doesn't know what the rules are. This ordinance allows for a very bright line as to what you can and can't have.
I'm with, okay.
I have to ask you this question, though, Sean. I don't think you have a copy of the bill in front of you, but that language is underlined, meaning it is new. So, Sean, you've got a situation where I can think of 100 circumstances. Let me give you two. A person at the D walks out onto the sidewalk, not into the street. He's got a cocktail or a bottle of beer he's lawfully bought, and he's consuming it on what he considers the premises. He steps onto the sidewalk, ROW, anywhere in the right-of-way. He is subject to fines, maybe arrest, but definitely citation by you, and you don't want to really do that. And the same thing, unless it's in plastic, you know, at certain nights we've figured that out. But now, even in plastic, it's a violation. So, according to this language. And then if somebody goes up to Oscar's restaurant, brings down a bottle of very expensive champagne that they've drunk part of, and they want to see the action on 4th of July, and they're standing right there. They're just not even they're not even really in the mall, are they? They're on a right-of-way. But they're inside the Union Pacific right-of-way, which is the western boundary. You're going to have to cite them. But that $300 bottle of champagne, and I know people spend a lot more than that, I'd sure as hell take it home. Maybe a $1,000 bottle. The point is, now, that's a glass bottle, obviously, because you can't sell champagne in plastic. And so, therefore, you run into situations where if somebody's in a bad mood, one of your officers has just had it up to here, and he sees this, chewy, you know, and it can happen. I'd rather not have it happen intentionally where we passed something knowingly we were going to cause that problem. I'd like to have officer discretion. This leaves your officer no discretion whatsoever. And so I'm thinking we just need to kind of cool it on this paragraph a little bit until we figure out what it is, or get some more interpretations between now and council meeting.
Councilman, the people that hold the tavern licenses, the resorts, the casinos, they've recognized the challenges that we have as law enforcement and the environment that has been created over the course of the last year. This new ordinance is going to increase the amount of work that they have to do by quite a bit. They're going to have to post people up at doors. They're going to have to find plastic products. They're taking responsibility for this because they recognize that it's a problem. If anybody's taken a punch on this, you know, it's got to be them as well.
Councilman?
So the way I'm reading the ordinance, Sean, is if you purchase a bottle of beer in a casino, they would put it in a plastic cup, and then you're okay walking around.
That's correct.
That's number one. Number two is you can't have closed containers of alcohol in this particular area. So you can't walk around with a 12-pack of beer that hasn't been opened yet, because we don't want people in that area walking around with unopened alcohol because they could consume it there. So we don't want that to occur. And it is an officer safety issue because those things can be thrown and an officer can be hit. So that takes care of that in this ordinance. I guess the part that's kind of missing is the packaged liquor stores are there. They're legitimate stores. Somebody walks in there and purchases an alcoholic beverage and takes it out into this area. Technically, they are violating this ordinance by doing that.
That's correct.
So there has to be, I guess the issue for me is there has to be a way to differentiate somebody who has purchased an alcoholic beverage out of a packaged liquor store and is moving from that area to someplace else and comes in contact with a police officer that they're legitimate, which is different from somebody coming downtown with a 12-pack of beer that they bought somewhere else that they plan on consuming there, that you come in contact with, that you want them to leave. So there has to be a way for that alcohol to be identified, whether it's in some kind of a closed, like a Ziploc or some kind of a bag that says, this was purchased from this packaged liquor store, it's sealed, and I'm in possession of it because I'm going someplace else with it. So, and the officer can see that. The officer can look at it and say, okay, this was purchased at a packaged liquor store. It's not opened, it's sealed, and your officer can ask them, well, where are you going? And they'll say, I'm going back to my hotel room, or I'm going back to my car to go somewhere else. So there has to be a way for you to do that. So for this to work, we would have to mandate that packaged liquor stores put their alcoholic beverages that they purchase in some kind of some kind of visible container. So is that something that would be part of this ordinance that we would mandate, or we would just ask the packaged liquor stores to do that, and I don't even know if they would? I mean, that's the only way that I see this working.
If I might add to that, though, I think we have the basis to at least start this. And that if somebody goes into a legitimate business that is selling packaged liquor, it has to be sealed and unopened, period. Otherwise, it's in violation. And that everything else will be in a plastic cup, and hopefully they will be dated plastic cups, because everybody's going to go in the trash and take out the plastic cup from the D and save it to bring it back later on to open. So my sense, all we would need to do is say, open and must remain in original sealed configuration. Therefore, any officer that sees anything that's open, immediately fined. But this, at least as a start, gives the liquors, the sales, to these smaller stores to do the proper thing which is expected of them. I think we can add it and tear it apart later, but I think about the inventory that's there, and if in fact it's the true and legitimate purpose of why they were granted the license in the first place to be able to do it, then they should sell it that way. And they then would say to the people, these signs everywhere, you may only take this out, and it must remain in the sealed original container. Sealed, not opened with the plug out and put back in. Sealed. Anything else is confiscated. That's it. It's done, and they have a fine.
Sounds like a good start.
So did that make sense, what I said about having it, the difference between purchasing something in a packaged liquor store for consumption elsewhere, and how you are going to, I mean, you do have discretion. So
Certainly.
you want, during your investigation, I guess you could determine that somebody purchased a packaged liquor item that was unopened, that is technically in violation of this, but you talk to the person and you understand they're legitimate, they're moving on someplace else. You guys can figure that out. But would it be easier to just make sure it's identifiable so you don't have those kind of issues? So,
But how about just a six-pack, and it's six-pack, that's identifiable. And as long as it's not open, who cares where I bought it? I'm not allowed to open it on the Fremont Street Experience.
well, that's the issue here.
So
is that
open
this-
and original,
Well,
sealed.
the issue is we don't want unopened alcohol in this particular zone at all. We don't want bottles, we don't want cans that are unopened. We don't want them in that area. We just want plastic cups. So if somebody does bring unopened stuff down there, we don't want them walking around because the potential is for them to open it up. Why are they walking around with a six-pack of beer in this particular zone if they don't plan on consuming it when the police aren't looking?
But when I am an owner of a small shop that sells packaged liquor, you're saying now I can't sell any packaged liquor?
No, the question is, how do you identify that somebody purchased that at a packaged liquor store so they're not in violation of the law?
Because
And-
the only thing they can drink out of is plastic cups on the mall.
Right. So-
Val, he had a comment.
I don't think we
And
want
I'll
to
get to
adopt, I don't think we want to adopt a provision that makes it illegal to possess something that's closed, even if we rely on officer discretion. I think the drafter intended to talk about either openness of a container or consumption. So I think our choices realistically would be either to delete A entirely or to have A talk about consumption on public property from a glass or metal container intended for beverage purposes, or to talk about the openness of the container. One of those three things, but not, because I don't think the intent here was to make it illegal, notwithstanding officer safety, to make it illegal to carry something out to your hotel room. That was not the intent of the drafter.
And I think also, I mean, the original, we say that over and over again in all the meetings, original sealed container, sealed. So that doesn't mean popping a cork. And any six-pack that somebody has in their little loot thing that's carrying it, if we can just put those words in. Yes, please.
Mayor and Council, good morning. My name is Frank Hawkinson. I wasn't intending to speak on this, but as president of the NAACP, and one of the original folks that voted in the Fremont Street Experience, I sit here and listen and I think, okay, I know what they're trying to do, but what's a better way to do it? And maybe if in fact everybody had plastic bottles, beer, they used to sell those in the old days, I'm sure that the manufacturers do sell plastic. That way at least you could differentiate between somebody who had a can or somebody who had a bottle versus if everybody on Fremont Street was selling only plastic. And I think I agree with Val. I think it's a huge issue to penalize, and especially the people we're trying to get here, the visitors who may not know the rules, who may not, obviously won't know the law, and they walk down the street with a can of beer or a bottle of liquor or wine, and they get a citation. So
Thank you. Thanks.
good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you rewrite that then?
Do you want it to be about openness or about consumption?
About openness and original sealed container. Openness. It's illegal.
Well, if we were to change lines 3 through 5, starting at the end of line 3 where it says it is unlawful for a person, it is unlawful for a person on public property to possess an alcoholic beverage in a glass or metal container which is fit or intended for beverage purposes. I don't know if that takes care of your issue or if you want to.
I would like it to say, to be on public property in possession of any open glass or medical container, and then take out that little piece there, but put in, it must remain in its original sealed configuration. So there's no open container, no drinking, but yet these people that own the stores are able to sell their goods and not have to do as Councilman
Well-
Coffin said, give them a timeline to get rid of all your liquor.
Subsection B is the one that talks about original packaging. Subsection A is the one that talks about containers fit for beverage purposes. Those are two different things. And I think if you're trying to incorporate some of B into A, then the question is, do we still need B?
I was
Maybe
gonna say, put them
we
together.
combine A and B somehow.
Yes.
But I'm not sure I can do that right here to everyone's satisfaction.
So how do we proceed?
Maybe we could bring back some language on Wednesday and propose it.
Your Honor, you're asking me if I don't feel comfortable voting today without seeing that language, because we still have the problem of, I mean, there are beverages that just cannot be bottled in plastic. And so, there are questions in my mind. I'd just like to see the language written down
I would too.
in its context, and
So we'll obey this.
I would ask you to do that. I do want to say this, abeyance is a good idea, but I do want to say this about Councilman Anthony's suggestions. He's got the blueprint. He's got the perfect solution, I think, as we move forward, to identify the location and the condition and the probable destination of liquor, so that we do have that way to go. I don't think you need to necessarily write that into the ordinance, but I don't know. Maybe you do. But so we've got something profitable out of this hearing. That's for sure.
Please.
Deputy Chief Tom Roberts, Metro Police. Sitting back here, there is a receipt that's produced every time you purchase something. I mean, obviously, it may be too late for this ordinance, or even if we redraft it, but it might be a possibility to use later on. That if you have someone that's purchasing to take to the hotel, the vendor could write on the receipt, going to wherever, Four Queens or whatever. They have to maintain that receipt while they're out on the mall. And it might provide us some kind of document that we could refer to. And it's timed, it's dated, and certainly if they're, bringing a receipt from yesterday, we would probably know that. But just an idea for the future. Obviously, it may not make it in this one, but anything in the right direction is positive for us that limits the overconsumption of alcohol and reduces the number of possible weapons in public safety.
I think
Your
it's a
Honor,
great idea.
maybe we don't need to obey it for 2 weeks, but rather 2 days, or forward it with no recommendation, or forward with a recommendation to pass, but produce amendments so that we can at least look at it.
I think we should bring it back to recommend.
Do you think so? Okay.
Mayor, if I may, Orlando
Yes.
Sanchez,
Where are you?
Deputy City Manager.
Okay.
Mayor, if at all possible, if we can just do exactly what you're recommending, is do an amendment. We will brief tomorrow and get it ready, but if we can at all move this forward on Wednesday.
Fine, well, it'll be fine, because we can hear it at open meeting at council. So that would be fine. I think that's a great idea. I think as we go forward with this, we're going to find success or failure, and then you change. I mean, again, death and taxes are the only two things you can't change. So in this ordinance, we know what we're trying to do, and we know we're trying to make Fremont Street Experience in Fremont downtown the place everybody wants to be. We don't want to penalize our visitors and tourists who don't know, and we like healthy competition, but we like to abide by the law. So I think if that would work, Mr. Steve, does that work if you bring it back in form to full council? Happily, you say yes? That doesn't look happily.
Mayor?
Yes.
Well, just a couple of things. I mean, Councilman Coffin brought up the inventory. I think being this for 2 weeks till the next recommending kind of puts everybody on notice that this is probably happening, so that gives everybody a couple of weeks to deal with their inventory. And I think it just gives us a little bit more time to shake this out, and if we obey this till the next recommending committee, and then it would move forward 2 days later at the city council meeting.
Well, and my confusion in the issue of the inventory is if we go forward with what sort of is on the table now, they don't have to get rid of their inventory. They just can't sell it to consume it. They can sell it and keep their inventory for people to take it where it's intended to go, away. And I just think it's wrong for us to force a private business to dilute themselves of their business if, in fact, they follow the letter of the law. So I just want to make it easy, and I would be willing, but what do you feel? Do you want to obey it, or you just like to hear it with the new written?
I think the councilman has got the right idea.
Bring it back to recommending in 2 weeks?
Yeah, because
All right, make a motion. Let's do this. Make a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion, but I just want to be clear on what I'm thinking here is, number one, what this ordinance is primarily supposed to do is get rid of metal and bottles in this particular zone. So people are just walking around with a plastic cup with beer, wine, some whiskey, in that particular area, we really shouldn't have any bottles or any cans in that area unless they're obviously identifiable as being purchased from a packaged liquor store, and for moving from there to someplace off-premise, so the officer knows that that's what's happening. So that's really what the gist of this whole ordinance
Yes.
is all about.
Yes, and that's a good idea, the receipt.
The
'Cause
receipt,
that's
some kind of
identifiable.
package, something, if there's voluntary compliance from the packaged liquor stores to help the enforcers
idea.
identify the stuff, that's great. And, if they decide to do that, that'd be fine. If they don't decide to do that, then we would probably have to add a little bit more teeth into that, so.
Can we hear from Mr. Rowe first, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Russell Rowe here on behalf of Boyd Gaming, which is a member of Fremont Street Experience. Just to provide a little clarification on this, and thank you for considering this ordinance as we contort ourselves to try to fix the problem of an unenforceable law due to unallowing consumption of packaged liquor in a consumption area, which creates problem for our law enforcement. And the metal and glass provision is really a safety provision. It also does help us provide some additional level of enforcement of the provision that you can't consume packaged liquor anywhere near where you buy it. But the primary purpose is safety for law enforcement and safety for the tourists and patrons of Fremont Street. The members of FSE have always said they'll be part of the solution. This is part of our solution. We're going to have to go through great expense by hiring people to man doors and make sure nobody's taking anything out of our properties that's not in a plastic cup if it's an alcoholic beverage, which is a good thing. It's going to be a tremendous expense for us, but we're willing to do it because we think it's the right thing to do for Fremont Street. We will, in fact, sell less or no metal bottles. For I think Heineken is one where you can't buy from Heineken plastic bottles. They sell it only in glass, as I understand. So we will, and this ordinance may or prevent us from selling, and we think everybody.
Unless you put it in a plastic cup.
Unless we put it in a plastic cup.
Which is what we're asking.
Right. So it seems, from our position, having everybody conform to the same requirements, especially when we're talking about the safety of our public and our tourists and our law enforcement professionals, that it's not a lot to ask to not sell glass.
Well, let's see
and
how
plastic.
it goes. Let's get the wording, and let's go see in 2 weeks at recommending where this goes, and we can always go there. So let's take smaller steps right from the start. So did you make that motion, or did I cut you
What's the
off?
date, Beverly? June 16th. Okay, so I'll make a motion to obey this till June 16th, which is the next recommending committee.
Okay.
And Karen, I think you need to contact the packaged liquor stores and let them know, we need them to somehow be involved in the identification of the stuff that's sold out of their stores that ends up within this zone, so we can identify that it was bought there. I think that conversation needs to occur before the 2 weeks is up.
Don't they all have receipts?
Your Honor, for the record, Karen Duddleston. I know in previous letters from the packaged liquor folks, they did agree of their own volition to put things in bags, and we had talked about marked bags
Okay.
at that
But
time.
you
And
know
they
what's-
could be marked and sealed with a stapler or something like that. So we'll see if we can work with the city attorney's office to come up with some ideas for you as well.
I would highly recommend we take the suggestion there, because receipts are dated and exactly what's been purchased is there. To put them in a bag, you can just put anything in a bag and say, here's the bag of something else. Just maybe stapled bag with the receipt visible.
And I believe that would probably, if that's a burden on the applicant, would have to go into Title 6.5, and so we'll work with
Right.
the attorney's office on how we would or could incorporate that into this.
Okay, that's my motion then.
Okay, there's a motion, please vote, and please post. That motion carries, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go backwards now to our agenda, what number is it? Yes. Chief Bill's here. Okay. Morning. This is bill number 2014-31. And we were in discussion, and Councilman Coffin had some questions, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself for the record that you're here to respond for us, please.
Good morning. For the record, Robert Bell, Deputy Chief and Fire Marshal for the City of Las Vegas.
Thank you. Good morning. All right, Councilman Coffin.
Thank you, Your Honor. The questions, OC, that I had were the same ones we had in a private meeting, to make sure that we don't unnecessarily burden people with sprinklers when none is necessary. And I mean, that's only my opinion, that none are necessary. If, in fact, you've got a repurposed building, most likely, but not always, where you've got exterior service of food and drink, and there's some sort of covering, and I'm not sure exactly what covering triggers sprinklering, but in fact does cause a great deal of expense, and sometimes in these old buildings we don't have it, and I'm just worried that we are forcing people to spend a lot of money where it practically doesn't make sense, except in the case of occupancy. But I want to go ahead and hear what you've proposed.
Yes, I just want to thank you, first of all, for bringing this issue to my attention with respect to that business that we talked about, Rachel's Kitchen. That project, based on the construction type and the occupancy that it had, triggered sprinklers under the normal code provisions. The sprinkler provision under the canopy that we had talked about, where they had seating outside of that restaurant, sprinklers were being required in the 2009, and that was being brought forward in the 2012 code. When you brought it to my attention, I took a look at that, a second look at that provision. These code provisions come from the Southern Nevada Code Council, so that's a committee that's composed of Henderson, North Las Vegas, the county, and the City of Las Vegas. So they all, bought into this provision, to this particular provision of the code. But I took a look at that provision, and this building is currently already sprinklered. It's non-combustible construction. It's the highest type of construction you can have. It has a smoke control system in it, full fire alarm system. There was no need in this instance to have sprinkler protection at the exterior canopy. And it has since been taken out of our code under the 2012 proposal.
If we, excuse me for interrupting you, if we adopt the code today, that provision will have been removed?
Yes.
Okay. That was the main question I had, Your Honor. That was the only
Thank you
question
for
I had.
coming.
All right.
Anybody from
Thank
the
you.
public wishing to be heard on this particular item, please come forward. Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and thank you, Chief. How about you make the motion since you delayed us?
All right. And since it's already in here, we don't have to move to amend. We just simply move to adopt.
Okay.
I so do.
There's a motion, please vote, and please post. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we move on to agenda item 6. Bill number 2014-33 for possible action establishes licensing regulations and standards for medical marijuana establishments. This bill has been sponsored by Councilman Bob Coffin. This bill, the bill should be submitted to a recommending committee for review, hearing, and recommendation to the City Council for final action. And so we are now open on this one, and Ms. Duddleston.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager. As you are aware, we have had several public meetings already on the licensing regulations. We started out with a very lengthy draft and worked with the public through several meetings. We had a lot of online comments, and we did a business impact statement. We addressed a large variety of issues. including requests from the public to allow vertical integration, to rewrite our security requirements, to look through the prohibitions, to expand hours of operation, to address residency requirements in standalone buildings, to allow some educational activities in dispensaries, to remove plant limits and cultivation limits within facilities, to make some changes in edibles and labeling, and to reduce the fee proposals. In what you have before you today, those fee proposals have been reduced by over 60% of what was originally advertised in our business impact. The proposed regulations allow 4 different licenses: dispensaries, cultivation, independent laboratories, and production facilities. It does require a permit that would be brought forward to you with the land use and the permitting for dispensaries, cultivation, and production facilities. So you would hear both the land use and the request for such a business for a compliance permit at the same time before the City Council. We have concentrated our requirements into the basic areas that the Department of Justice memo has outlined for good enforcement of medical marijuana regulations. So you'll see provisions for a plan for security. You'll see provisions for insurance. You'll see requirements for local labeling, edibles, the hours of operation, the signage at facilities, plans for closure if a business has to close for bankruptcy or transfer reasons to make sure that they can maintain plant material at cultivation, requirements for local disposal in restrictions on your wastewater system as well as into your community refuse, and the renewal of licenses. We've also specified those license fees as an annual fee and then a gross revenue fee that is only charged at the dispensary level at the end of the process, which makes the overall effect a 2% at cultivation, 2% at production, and 2% at dispensaries, just charged at that final sale. So if a product goes directly from cultivation to dispensary, the gross revenue fee is 4%. If it goes from cultivation to production to dispensary, 6%. You'll find that those are in line with what several of the other communities in Nevada have advertised those. We also, in the version that I just handed out to you, we had some drafting errors that we worked with our attorneys on, and we've corrected those in the version that's available to the public, that's with the clerk's office. I've simply handed you a copy with those highlighted in yellow so that you can see specifically what they are. And I'll give you a couple examples on page 5. Under the permit application, it states that applications on the will be accepted until 3 p.m. on the deadline. We've simply added on the final day to make sure that it's clear that it's not 3 p.m. every day. It's just on the final day we need those in before 3 p.m. The state regulations, in working with the state regulator, they are going to come up with regulations for certain things rather than having individual approvals. So we've made sure in our drafting that it simply states the state in accordance with the state regulator rather than specifically asking them to approve something, to make sure that we are in coordination with those. We've also clarified that paraphernalia which can be sold at dispensaries, you know, we have smoke shops, we have regulations against certain types of paraphernalia being sold in shops. We've clarified that if it's the paraphernalia that's defined by NRS 453A.125 can be sold in the dispensaries. I know that was a concern for some of the proposed operators as well. And we've made sure that we have all of the correct NRS statutes in here, so you'll see some of those clarified down to the actual A, B, or C, so we're very clear on what we're talking about. The decision point that we want to make sure we have clear from you today, if I could get you to refer to page 26, at the end of B, which is the semi-annual gross revenue fee. This is the concept of the community impact fee that we had discussed with the council and with the public, is to have a portion of the semi-annual gross revenue fees be able to be dedicated by the City Council in accordance with its annual budget for drug abuse resistance education in primary and secondary education settings, to promote education within the community of the dangers of abuse of marijuana and the effects of indigestion of marijuana-infused products that may have on children, and for research related to the medical use of marijuana. We wanted to make sure that we had your direction clear. Was there a certain percentage of those gross revenue fees that you wanted to go to that purpose, or was the 1% that was originally advertised in addition to the 4% and 6% what you wanted to go to that purpose? So we just need clarification from you on that to make sure we have
May I
this
speak on
correct.
that? Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the fact that the staff always had a placeholder of 1% on the use of the funds, not on a tax increase or a portion of, not on the actual tax number itself, but on the revenue received, the spending thereof, and you can direct the spending, you can direct a percentage, and you can direct the fencing off of funds. It's been done before by the City Council. And I proposed in meetings with a number of people that 10% of the gross revenue, not the license fee, but the revenue from sales of the product, be given to the purposes outlined by staff here. Research might be the last sentence, but in a sense it becomes the most important thing. We have to make a sincere effort to find out what the effects of marijuana really are, because the hindrances placed on research by the fact that grants are hard to get really puts it on us if we're going to assume the responsibility in some way or another of licensing this, because we do incur some moral responsibility, if not legal, and that is that we need to find out more about what it is we're allowing. I grant that people that are using marijuana now understand what they're using, but there are a lot of new people that are going to be undertaking this, and I always say this from the standpoint of I'm walking in their moccasins because I'm going to be a user to try to replace the opioids that I take for my pain. Therefore, I feel like we need to have a number, but it has to be a meaningful number. I've had discussions with research people, and we don't really know what our revenue is going to be. You know, I don't even want to shoot at a number. Some states have made that mistake. I think it'd rather be something that we can look at and see what's coming in, and you can just appropriate accordingly out of that 10%. But I believe that that's a critical thing for us to show that our intent is to keep this as a medical and truly a scientific move forward. And so that's one of the changes that, well, it isn't in this here, it isn't in the draft, and it would have to be put in by amendment so that they have the clear direction. So that's one. I'll let you cogitate on that. Pardon?
One thing on the research and looking at a larger picture, I'd love to see that divided down into research on growth, production, inspection, in addition to use.
Anything that makes sense. We can expand on it if related to means
beyond
everything.
just the use, it is, right.
Okay.
So make it a more global statement, so we're not constricted to the research just in one area.
And we can also refine
Right.
our intent on that, but I think our discussion here today is part of the record. It helps assist the full council. So that was a number that I felt would be meaningful enough, and I've discussed this with a couple of people who do research, and they're competent to do it. And everybody should be allowed to bid on research, and everybody should be allowed to give us the feeling. But we may be the first people to really dedicate. I don't know if anybody else has dedicated this amount to that kind of thing. And so I hope that we will be able to do that. I don't think, or do you need motions now, Your Honor? Would you prefer to have motions as we go along?
Mr. Fagg, what do you think? How would you like us to proceed
I
here?
believe you would probably want to take public input first before you discuss and make motions.
Okay.
Of course. Okay.
So shall we, what is your wish here? Should we just talk and have public, this is open public comment anyway, but let's try to stay on the narrow issues as we go forward. So right now, if you would look at if you have the single, this is two-sided, this page number should be the same. On page 26, under B, under C, down at the bottom, 3. Any comments there anybody'd like to make on the research aspect? and the suggestions that Councilman Coffin made. If you please come forward.
I think we probably ought to take comment on just about every section of the bill, but
Yeah, we'll do
I would
that.
appreciate hearing.
But what I'm
critical
trying, if we
messages.
get too broad, we need to stay on, maybe just one at a time, however you wish to do it. Please.
Again, Frank Hawkins, for the record, I think it's a great idea, and from the research that I've been doing, I haven't seen anybody or anywhere else that may be doing that. And I don't see the two-page that you guys have out here yet.
This is just two-sided. I think they're,
No, there should be enough copies, or a bunch of copies. Enough
here
for
they
everybody
are
in
with
the
Ms.
room.
Duddleston. Okay.
Let's make sure they have
Morning.
time to copy them.
Industries. I first of all wanted to acknowledge the exhaustive work and effort that the panel has put into this process. I know that they've taken a great deal of abuse, and the effort is acknowledged, extraordinarily appreciated, to have a foundational pivot point upon which the rest of the nation can anticipate to look at for a model of a successful rollout of this methodology. So our teams and many others focused on the development of research want to really acknowledge that this aspect of taking a portion of this revenue and applying it to research is absolutely critical to the advocacy and efficacy of the industry moving forward from this point. And you have an opportunity here now to do some extraordinary things for this industry that, again, as Councilman Coffin has said, has not been addressed by anyone in the industry with the exception of this panel. So we wanted to acknowledge that. Press at any position, there's several members of our teams and many of the other applicants that would be willing to participate in panels to see how these funds could best be used. And I just wanted to make that point clear and give you our greatest gratitude for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Council. Just wanted to make a quick comment name is Timothy Otto, for the record. Just a quick comment on research is there has been a group of pretty much of physicians worldwide. They have it's been going on for the past 25 years, and it's been held again this year in Italy. It's called the International Cannabinoid Society, Research Society. I was just basically giving that information out to anyone who's really interested to basically look into the real medicational benefits of this, which has been, they have a variety of lots of issues that they have addressed with serious medical clinical findings, and majority of these same physicians have been the physicians responsible for publishing most of these contents on, which is usually used by all doctor's offices as well, PubMed.gov. Anyone could, have access to, on the internet, could go to PubMed.gov, type in the word cannabinoids or cannabis, and majority of these information that come out are all basically came from within that panel. So I was just, acknowledging them for their work, and if anyone is interested in, basically tapping into their resource and finding more information on what they've been able to achieve, that would be a very good start. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Solis, the president of WeCan Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada. Madam Mayor, through you to the council members that are here, we have a 501c3 for education for medical cannabis from the federal government, and we also have a 170A for medical research from the federal government, and it would be keeping the money local. So
Great.
There's another resource
Good.
for you guys.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, council members. For the record, my name is William Horn. Comment on this particular section. I think it's a good idea. And Madam Mayor, your idea of expanding it more globally on research and considering a grow, et cetera, inspection, I think will add on to what the marching orders have been to UNR Medical School. Is supposed to be doing research on this as well. I would suggest perhaps including your colleagues at the other municipalities and the commission in your discussions on them as well, helping you kind of get a bigger bang for your buck. It's a larger community of the valley. So I know many of them have already moved forward so much in what they're doing, but I think if only the city were to be taking out a portion for research, I think your pool of dollars would be relatively small. But if you include the other municipalities that are partaking in it, it'd be bigger, and I think you get more bang of your buck for the research efforts. Suggestion, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mayor, William, it's good to see you, and your term is almost up. I know you can't wait until you're really not a legislator any longer. I would hope that should anything, well, I know more will be addressed in the next legislative session. You won't be there, but it would be nice if well, I don't want to force another mandate on local government, but the idea is that local governments will probably join in with this kind of an effort. It would make sense, and they'll see what the city has done. I don't think that the county even has really finished its business licensing and or its appropriation discussion, really. And so they still have a chance to jump on board this. And you make a lot of sense. The combined revenue from all the governments together would provide a great pool of money to do research on everything, including what the mayor has said. I really believe that, well, I don't believe anybody's intentionally lying to us when they talk about the efficacy of this product for various uses. I think that sometimes, though, there's room for puffery and exaggeration. That happens in anything that people believe in. And also, we need to verify for ourselves. I think we owe it to the payers, because this, in essence, is the people's money who consume the product who would be paying for this. But because it comes out of a dedicated fund that would go to the general fund and be allocated from the general fund, you have a situation where all the taxpayers are participating in a supervisory role to make sure that we do get some independent word on what we're being told. And it's not an industry-funded measure. It's not even an industry-gifted research. It's something that the city would be monitoring itself because it's paying for it. So I think that, if everybody wants to join in, we could all pool together. But I appreciate your suggestion, because we don't want to mandate it from the legislature.
And
yes,
I would hope that, our university and our hospitals will all be part of helping this effort. I mean, because we need the data, and we need the results from the hospitals and doctors' offices and university personnel helping us get through this, because this can be a very, very large undertaking on our part. And we do want to show leadership here, and we want to do it right.
Yes, Madam Mayor, and to Councilman Coffin's comments, I agree with you. You probably don't want a legislative mandate, but sometimes you need a legislative authorization to do certain things, and to the extent that the local municipalities can come together with an idea on what that could be, having United Front, as you well know, Councilman, in Carson City, would be very helpful in that. And then also in my discussions with the various individuals, companies who are seeking licensure in this area, I think you'll find that they are very amenable to, they're encouraging this type of effort on research, if for no other reason than to prove, as you say, Councilman, the efficacy of the product and other regards to its beneficial uses. And so I don't think you'll get a lot of pushback in that regard as well.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me actually put the cart before the horse, because we did start talking about how we would spend the money we don't have. So, that's important. I've never done that before. But in any event, thank you very much, William, for your endorsement of that process.
Thank you.
And, Your Honor, I think I seized on it because Karen asked for guidance. And that became kind of the first subject, but we've got plenty of other things to discuss.
It's a safe area to begin with, and I think there might be grants available if we handle this correctly through NIH and the federal government, because this takes off across the country. They're going to want to see something that's really well-organized, well-planned, well thought through.
Yeah, I don't want to see full legalization until really we've done
This-
work that we
right.
think we could stand
Correct.
behind.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think it's the leadership. And I would, where did Mr. Horn go? Did he leave? There. I wanted to thank you because I really, as we look to the other municipalities in the county, they're inundated with different requests and different issues. And so I think ultimately, as the city takes a leadership and does this wisely, hopefully they will then contact us to join in the pursuit of this research and educational piece of it, rather than going and trying to incorporate all of these municipalities right now that are all just sort of all over the place. And I think if we can stay on focus, we're going to have something that's really fabulous. So I'm really hopeful, and thank you so much.
I think you're right,
You
Madam
going to
Mayor.
run for council?
No, ma'am. I'm running for a district court judge.
Oh,
In Department
that's
5.
right. Good luck
My
to
little
you.
plug.
You're on TV saying that. Wonderful, man. Okay, Councilman Coffin's charging you $5 for that. Okay, so proceeding. Anybody else on this particular research issue? Okay. And be sure to say your name, please.
Sure. Lizette Matos, 38 East Serene, Las Vegas, Nevada. I think it's an excellent idea, particularly since we are the first state to mandate laboratory testing from product before it goes onto the dispensary shelves. I think that data compiled with the medical schools could work together to really do some new research, local research, which is a great idea, so totally support it. I think it's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the one thing I would ask Councilman Coffin to make sure that this isn't a shared fund with something else, that as this fund would grow, that some other part could take a piece away.
Well, we would want to make sure that, I know finance is not represented here, but they certainly, well, managers here, but the idea is that you can fence off funds so that they're not out there floating around for some other special project or collective bargaining, for example. You do want to make sure that these are kept intact for that.
Well, and that it isn't,
And I think that's
go to general funds, you
yeah,
don't
and
want
it's
it there.
been done
You want it-
before.
Right.
It's been done before, and
Right.
we have that precedent.
Okay, so proceeding on, could I ask, was the deadline for applications ever changed? Did we hear anything on that?
From the state?
Yes.
The state issued, I believe it was on Friday, they will be accepting applications August 5th through August 18th, 2014 in Carson City.
August 5th, 18th, so that is a pushback of some. Okay.
We had heard late summer, we had heard mid-July or early August, so it is
Yes, within the,
early to mid-August, yes.
and as far as inspection applicants, do we have any inspections? You know, take over the inspections of the production end?
From the state?
No, just out at large, hospitals, medical groups, anybody talking about wanting to inspect?
Oh,
and
the
make-
laboratories?
Yes.
We have not, since we do not have licensing regulations or licenses for laboratories, we do not have any. I've had several that have contacted our office that are interested, that have contracts already with several of the local law enforcement organizations that currently test this and other substances, that are interested in licensure and have made inquiries, and several of them commented on our regulations as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what is the best way to
Well, I
proceed
would,
with this?
Your Honor, if we could
Take it one
do
at a
this,
time?
just go a page at a time, because it won't take that long, but there are some things that perhaps we'd have testimony on. I do know that I quarrel with, in the preamble, the assumption that number 4 is correct, and that is that medical use will result in, because when in essence what we're saying is it's correlated, in other words, necessarily result in negative secondary effects, and then it goes into crime and punishment, et cetera. The thing is it's not really shown that medical itself will do that. It could be that you have a lot more arrests, and you may have a lot more stuff when you go full legal, but the assumption made in the preamble almost says, well, why are you doing this whole thing, if in fact it is done that way? And I don't like that language at all. But again, Your Honor, if it's put in there to help some people vote for it, that could be one thing. But I think it misstates and overstates the potential problems. That's where I have a problem. I just want to please bring that to your attention, Your Honor.
Should we ask for public comment as we go forward?
We could, but let's see, you want to finish the preamble first? That way because that just,
And just take the whole thing?
yeah, well, it's
Okay,
like.
so we're
that
going to do the
would be-
preamble. Everybody, please look at the items 1 through 7.
Yeah, I think that was the only thing that I questioned on.
Anybody on
pages 1 and
comments
2.
on that? And please be sure to state your name.
Good morning, Mayor, Councilman Coughlin, Councilman Stavros, Anthony. I'd have to agree with Mr. Coughlin regarding...
Wait, name?
I'm sorry, Attorney Bruce Gale.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you know, you're running for office. Get your name
Yes.
out there.
830 Las Vegas Boulevard South, Las Vegas, Nevada. District Court Judge, Department 22, candidate. Okay, sorry, Your Honor. All right, so the findings, I have to agree with Mr. Coughlin regarding Section 6.95010 subsection A, Sections 4, 5, and 6. I don't know if those are really valid, and I think those are inconsistent with, I think Sections 4, 5, and 6 should be deleted.
Well, could you just add the word may? I mean, when you look at 6, marijuana, cannabis, edible, and infused products may pose risks.
No,
So
that-
we do things like that and put in softening words, then you can leave it. And therefore, you are satisfying other people who feel very strongly. So,
It's a minor point, Your Honor. I have other comments to make when it's
Okay.
appropriate, but I thought I'd give you my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Your Honor, if I could comment. If
Please.
I could comment, I'd like to leave the language in there. They do pose risks to the wrong people, and they do smell, either skunk or excrement sometimes. So you have this problem, right? So
Yes.
why deny the fact that exists, 5 and 6? I think 4 needs to go or be changed, and in your words, using softening words. But they're, these are the purposes for most of the sections, 5 and 6. So the preamble tells the public what your intent is, and then you put the enacting sections in. So I would go ahead and leave them in there.
come forward if you would, and state your name. We're still on 1 through 7.
Yeah, my name is Dan Lutz, and I was going to comment on number 4 as well. I moved here about a year ago from Los Angeles and was in medical marijuana there industry for the last 7 years heavily. One of the things, Rand Corporation had put out a study during the period that Los Angeles was shutting down a bunch of the dispensaries. They saw that the crime rate actually increased around all of the ones that actually had closed down. And I just want to point out that that as soon as they had one would reopen, the crime rate would go basically down again. So it's a matter that it keeps people off of the street that would be doing things, to get their medication that is not as safe, and so there's more chances of crime happening. So keeping things in the dispensaries actually keeps the crime rate down.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Harrison Gale. I'm with G&B Wellness, and I would like to echo Bob Coughlin, or Councilman Coughlin's statement that 4 should be amended, that while these establishments may increase the risk in some circumstances, studies have shown that their medical marijuana establishments actually correlate to a reduction in violent crime. And the logic of that is that these facilities have security guards often on staff, either looking out the door or standing at the door at all times. And so I think that we just need to change the wording so that these negative consequences could present themselves, but it is not a de facto reality that they will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Susan Johnson. I'm the Certification and Training Coordinator for the state of Nevada, for Americans for Safe Access, as well as the Cannabis Training Institute. I was certified by the Cannabis Training Institute to teach classes on cannabis, the law, cannabis as a medicine, as well as how to run a cannabis business. For those of you who are not familiar with Americans for Safe Access, they have been endorsed by APA, which is the American Herbal Product Association. And for anyone who wants to know anything more about it, if they want to take the certification classes, or we also have several classes for medical professionals, legal professionals, people in law enforcement, et cetera, then we offer those classes here, and I am located here in Las Vegas.
Is there certification? Did you mention that?
Yes, there is. There's certification. I've had several clients take these classes if they simply want to know more about the medicine itself. Mostly during this licensing process, most of my clients obviously have been people who are going for licenses. But anyone can take the class. The certification is not necessary for someone who just wants to know, but if you're going into business or if you're a medical professional, then you can get certified as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyone else on 1 through 7? Okay, keep going.
The definitions, are you comfortable with the definitions? I know you wouldn't have written them down if you weren't, but well, let's hear some comment on definitions, because I know I've heard from one person who had a question. Boy, I lost my note on that definition. If someone would step forward.
Good morning again, Mayor and Council. Frank Hawkins. The definition of medical marijuana dispensary, I know there's throughout the ordinance, there's language as it talks about what you can and can't sell. But the question would be under related supplies. I sort of see that as conflicting with other areas within the ordinance, and I'll come back up when we get there. But for example, 6.95.120 under D and E, what talks about only samples can be viewed or sold, and then under E, nothing may be removed, or customers may not remove edible products or infused products. So I guess the question would be, if I think my point is related supplies, I think needs to be more defined, because I think they define what they don't want you to do, but I don't see that related supplies is clear. And I do know from at least our performance that some 20 to 25% of our sales will come from stuff other than the medical marijuana.
Frank, can we take that up at the time when we get down to that section?
Yes.
Because that also relates to delivery too, doesn't it?
Okay. So that's a definition question. It's just the related supplies.
Well, the definition is not, all right, Your Honor, I think
That's
definition
fine.
is not the law itself, but it does, the definitions do give you some room, but they don't really become that solid in the discussion, I don't think. Karen?
Your Honor, Karen Doubleston, Business Licensing Manager, that is the definition out of this state law. So we did not add to it.
Create your own, that's important. Thank you.
That's a good reminder, Your Honor, because they've worked in, our staff has worked in not only the statute into our ordinance, but also the cautionary guidelines from the Department of Justice to make sure that we stay.
You'll also find on the supplies that if you read down through the state law, through the state regulations, and what the director of the state program will allow, they have listed that paraphernalia, and that each piece of that has to be approved by dispensary by that state regulator. So those supplies go down through the different pieces, but what those are will be determined by the state regulating authority.
So we're totally in compliance with state.
From our reading of it and working with our outside counsel, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Your Honor, the only other thing I had, and frankly, it's a regret, but it is out of my control, and that is that because the requirements are so high for starting one of these businesses and so complex, but it hasn't ruled out at the state level a group or a user-owned cooperative, but in fact, because we're in ownership interest here on page 3, in essence, what we have seen is exactly what's defined here, and that is businesses principals, having funds that are sufficient to start one of these businesses with a heck of a lot of capital. In other words, $1 million probably is a good estimate on the low side. And I think, you know, as a person who might be a user, I know that what's going to happen is the cost of the product, because of the cost of regulation and licensure, and then and all of these things add to the cost of production and sales, we will have a high-priced product here. And we have to make sure that those people can afford it. And I realize some of the groups are going to come before us and say, we're good because we're going to give some of it away to veterans, or we're going to sell it at a discount to seniors. And that's all well and good. But I think that, and I think this is incumbent on the legislature to act, those who are going to lobby the legislature, to make sure that it is easier for a owner-user group to start as a co-op, which would have limitations on who it could sell to. Basically, only those members, and not just a dues, not just a club, but in fact an equal share, so that you just don't have the ability to sell to somebody for $25 to join the club, but rather you are really a stockholder. And we don't see that at the county, and I know when we see these applications, they're going to look just like the county's applications. And if capital requirements are really too high, you've got to find 500 to 1,000 people who agree with you. You can restrict their sales to just only themselves and not to out-of-state people, all that stuff. But in fact, that's my only, when I see this in the definitions, it reminds me of one shortcoming so far, but maybe the next legislative session can address that, Your Honor.
And is there anything, Ms. Duddleston, in here that the majority of ownership has to be residents of Nevada? Or can this entire operation, except for one, with a percentage of how much, be from out of state? What does the state say here?
There are no restrictions in the local. In the state criteria for how they will evaluate their applications, they do have as one of the criteria that they will look at the amount of taxes that the entities or the principals applying for that license have paid to the state of Nevada.
What the state has told me, Your Honor, if I could interrupt Karen, unless you were done, was that the co-op that I talk about is permitted under the existing statute. It's just that you have to come up with a lot of upfront money. So, you know, maybe we'll have it enabled a little easier.
Well, and the co-op, the numbers that are part of the co-op and background disclosure, I mean, is that just sort of now loose?
That is correct. Our regulations would allow anyone to come forward with a co-op application. There's certainly, it would be processed just like any other application based on the applicants and their proposals and the presentation that they would make to you through their application and their land use. I believe what's being discussed is at the state level, not in our regulations. At the state level, you have to show $250,000 of liquid assets for each license. So for a cultivation
What kind of assets?
$250,000 of liquid assets.
Okay.
For each independent license. So if you wanted cultivation, production, and a dispensary, you would have to show $750,000. That's at the state, in the state requirements. None of that is in our local regulations.
Okay, thank you.
So we don't oppose it, it's just that it's unlikely that anybody's going to be able to put that together before the August 1st deadline of the state for applications, and so we can only say to people out there, get it together, because I don't think we could save one of our 12 for that purpose. Anyway.
If you feel, you know, as we're moving along here, just come to the microphone and make comments as we're going carefully through this. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Karen, unlawful acts, do you want to just address that in general? You don't have to read the whole section. Just, you know, just say what the intent is, in your opinion.
The intent of the unlawful acts is just to make sure that everybody truly gets a license. So whether you're going to dispense marijuana or you're going to sell to a dispensary in the city, you're required to have not only your state registration, you're required to have a license from the city council. The hours of operation, and you have to comply with state law.
Okay. Thank you. Karen, thank you, Karen. Your Honor? through you to the members of the committee. The only one I've been troubled by is on page 4, number E, letter E, under 695.030, and that is the idea that we have limited hours. However, I've had a meeting with legal and with licensing prior to this meeting to indicate that and this would be consistent with the hours passed by the county of Clark, that in fact we have to make sure that we can sell under the special use permit. We need to be able to somehow find a way under the special use permit process to allow people to perhaps be open, as some pharmacies are open 24 hours a day. Now, this unlawful act provision here, this doesn't allow for the special use permit process to override it. It states it flat, you can't. So do we have to modify the language on this?
In terms of the special use permit, no. What we have proposed to do is to put the restrictions on the license. And we had talked earlier about some additional language that would allow you to do the 24-hour operation. I believe Karen has that outlined for you.
If that was something you would want to do, either in this section or in the dispensary, and we can meet with our legal counsel to determine where it would go, to place some sort of language that unless alternate times are specifically determined by condition of the license approval. Just so the council is aware that all of the hours of operation have to be submitted in the license application, registration application to the state. And the state will be addressing hours of operation as well in their process. So we could have conflict, but the hours that we have proposed from speaking with the other entities, from talking with Henderson, as well as what the county has already passed, the hours that we are proposing would be consistent throughout the valley.
Well, in this section, Your Honor, if I may continue then, do we have to add the qualifying language at this time? And we should be. I think it sounds like we should. To say subject, let's see, it's unlawful, except in the case of where a special use permit process allows different hours?
I think if you'd want it the way that, since the land use has already been passed by the city council, you would have to say unless alternate times are specifically determined by a condition of the license. So that would be not something we would determine at the time of permit when you're selecting your business partners. It would be at the final licensing of somebody that had been through both the permit process, the land use process, the state process, and then come back to you with alternate proposals, because we do have the issue that we do not know what the state is going to do on hours.
Well,
and they have specifically said that
the state's going to do what we want to do on hours and land use and licensing. There was no prohibition, was there, on 24-hour, for example, in the statute?
The state regulations require each applicant to propose hours to the state.
Well, I just want to make sure that we aren't shooting ourselves in the foot on the other section of this bill that we talked about, where we have the special use permit to control it, because you could put in longer hours or say the language should permit longer hours, but if Councilman Anthony, Councilman Ross, or anybody doesn't want a 24-hour in an area that might be a C1, for example, not too far within the guidelines, but in an area where he doesn't want it, then he should be able to, in the special use process, be able to prohibit 24 and be able to set hours. But when you state it as flatly as this, I don't know how we can change another section unless we do it now and have that language control there and then also in the other section.
Well, it sounded, if I may, Councilman, from what Ms. Duddleston read, that verbiage would in fact allow case by case a change of hours, and that if this time as we move forward, because everything's so green for us all, that we're in compliance with all the other entities and the state, that this would keep the door open for that application at such time as necessary. I intend to stay with the state.
My intent, Your Honor, is to introduce a little competition into this business. We have serious stake in competition. The county has done all it can to make it impossible to sell it at certain times and also at certain locations. What we have tried to do in this process, including land use, was make it possible for the city to be more friendly toward the customers, particularly those patients from out of state who come to stay at hotels. And if we don't have some ability somewhere along the line here to leave them open in some cases, in some industrial or some M districts, maybe some commercial industrial districts, we have a problem here, and it's our business, I think, to try to enhance the tax revenue if we can. And in so doing, we don't want to cut our nose off here on this issue by just simply doing what everybody else is doing. That's all.
But you don't feel that her words were giving that to the applicant per case, that it would allow for, at that time, up to 24 hours?
As long as it doesn't send a signal to the state that we want these hours, and that therefore they kind of make it a hard number. I think it needs to be understood by everybody in the intent of this ordinance that there is a special use permit process and that we could address longer hours through that without this limiting language in the so-called unlawful acts provision. If that's the case, and it's really stated on the record by our staff as being, and legal agrees, then I think we could move forward without changing that. But if not, I think we've got to make the change here.
Mayor Goodman?
Please.
I think we need to change E. I think staff has indicated a preference not to deal with hours on special use permits, so I would suggest either the language that Karen read or have E begin with except as otherwise specifically permitted by condition of license approval,
That's perfect.
et cetera.
Very well.
I like that. That sounds good.
Thank you. That's a suggestion we should adopt. Okay, when it comes time, I suppose. It's up to you, Your Honor, as far as when you want to adopt amendments.
As you stated it, is it embedded in your brain so you can write it down?
Momentarily it is.
Okay, good. Don't forget.
You still reserve the right to say, I don't know, though. I know in the end, which is a very good answer,
Okay.
by the way.
Yes, please.
Jennifer
Again, every
Solis.
time, say your name, sorry.
Yeah, Jennifer Solis, Madam Mayor, through you to the council. I think that's an excellent suggestion, except as otherwise permitted. But to be able to get your medication at 3 or 4 in the morning sometimes is necessary. I remember last year I had the flu really bad, and I had to wake up at midnight or 1, and I had to go to the store to get flu medication because I didn't have it, on hand. The legislative intent was for safe access for Nevada residents, and limiting the hours would limit that safe access. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Lizette Matos, 38 East Serene, Las Vegas, Nevada. I too believe that it is very important to be able to have 24-hour access, but I also do agree with the councilman that it is very important through a special use permit process. That is exactly what it does. It gives you the ability to do it, particularly in your area. So if there's an area that doesn't warrant necessarily 24-hour access, then that's on the special use permit process is exactly what it does. It gives you the ability to either grant or deny based on those hours, and you can dictate more on a case-by-case basis. But in general, I think that it's very, very important that the patients do have access, particularly since we are a 24-hour town, and if you're trying to work and you're sick and you're getting off maybe at midnight, you're working a 3 to 11, a 4 to 12, a 1 to 5 shift, and then it might make it difficult for patients to be able to access their medicine. So I'm total support of being able to have 24-hour access.
I'm sure there will be an app, sort of like for a pharmacy that's open
Exactly.
24 hours a day.
Exactly.
Where is it before you go running all over town? So I'm sure somebody will have their app up there that we're open 24/7.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, please.
Hi, for the record, I'm Sandra Tiffany, and Mayor
Morning.
and Councilman. Mine is on number C. And what I'm wondering, or clarification, it talks about who is not duly licensed under this ordinance. So here's the question. If you go to page is it here? Of course, I had it marked until I got up here. If you go to page, it looks like 12, where it talks about facilities not located within the city of Las Vegas. So my question is, let's say that I have a grow and a dispensary in Reno, and I have a grow and a dispensary here in the city. And I need to transport or sell wholesale from my cultivation site in Reno down here because there's more of a need for it at the moment. It looks like I can't do that. It looks like there's a county, Clark County prohibition here to go across county boundaries. So that's one question.
Let's get an answer on that.
Okay.
Ms. Duddleston, please.
That is correct. That in the out of jurisdiction is currently Clark County, that those grow facilities would be located within the county.
And I don't know about the attorney, but I believe I don't know if that could uphold constitutionally to have prohibitions along county boundaries. So I would like to have that amended or explained, because I don't think you could uphold that. The second question then is, let's say that I do have a cultivation site in Reno. I mean, it's not unusual for companies to take their inventory and be able to transport it between different stores depending on use. So let's say that though my cultivation site is in Reno, do I then need to pay Clark County for a business license and the annual fee to do business here, as well as pay the business license and the fees in Washoe County?
I would think so, but yes, no?
Your Honor, again, Karen Duddleston for the record. Yes, if you're located out of area and you want to conduct business inside the city of Las Vegas currently, you have to have a city of Las Vegas business license. It's no different than being a distributor of alcohol or a warehouse or something like that. You have to have a city license. Also, the direction from our city council was to keep our regulations as uniform as we could with Clark County's and what they put out. And they also have the restriction on out-of-area cultivation facilities and businesses restricted to Clark County.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, that currently is being looked at legally too, just so you should know.
Thank you.
So the city attorney might want to address that. And then the third question would be the taxes. Do you pay the taxes in Washoe, and do you pay the taxes here?
Your Honor, our gross revenue is only on the final sale at dispensaries. For cultivation and production, there's a flat fee, so it would be the same for anybody located outside of the city.
So you'd be paying double taxes, in other words. You'd be paying it in Washoe, you'd be paying it here, so that just keeps adding on to the taxes.
For the sale, Your Honor, you would not be selling out of a dispensary here and selling out of a dispensary in Washoe would be two totally different products.
But you would be taking the cultivation from one. Well, I guess you could do it from, no, you'd have to do, so what would the taxes be if it's the cultivation from Reno to the cultivation site in Las Vegas? Would there be a tax then?
There is a business license fee. It's a flat fee. It's based on how much grow space that you are producing to dispense into the city of Las Vegas. So it would just be on the product and the space. It's in 5,000-foot blocks of how much under plant canopy of actual plant space you're actually producing to ship into the city of Las Vegas.
Just
Sandy, I think that
black and white, would there be a sales tax to go from one cultivation center to the next cultivation?
Sandy, I
No
think we'll have
sales
to rely
tax.
upon
Excuse me,
statutory,
Councilman, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I had to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Sandy. I think we're going to have to rely upon statutory guidance on this, the inter-county, intrastate sales, because it's going to be iffy. People in Reno are going to wonder the same thing. They're going to realize that there is a better product in Clark County, and people there are going to want to buy it from here. So no doubt that probably that's what would happen. There'll be a solution, but it won't be settled, I think, at this level. I think it's going to be based upon court action and/or appeals to each council.
Thank you,
as to what
Councilman.
happens.
That's my only question right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Your
moving along.
Your Honor, I don't know who else is going to testify on that section.
Nope.
The thing I wanted to, one more on unlawful acts, and I think it's referenced in the bill here somewhere else. The question on F at the bottom of page 4, we know that because the statute permits the sale to people, cardholders from other states, that while the statutory requirements say something about electronic verification, I don't know if they're really cast in stone yet, are they? Because I don't know how we really find out if a person in another state theoretically has a valid card that's valid at that moment. How are we going to know? How is a dispensary going to know?
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston for the record. The state regulations specify an electronic verification system. It is the responsibility of the state entering both cards and out-of-state cards into that system and addressing those issues is a requirement of the state regulating authority.
What has the county done, if I could ask, Your Honor, on that issue?
Do you know what the county has done, Ms. Duddleston, on that?
Your Honor, we have not seen licensing regulations from this county yet.
Okay. The other piece that concerns me, I think it's really wise to have this database and that dispensaries validate that this is authentic. I look at counterfeit medical cards, and I think the database is critical.
Well, if I could address that too.
Yeah.
I'm torn two ways here. I know that the database would be nice, but it becomes a vulnerability for the state as well as the people who are cardholders to have their name in a database, particularly if you're going to cross state lines. The chances are that we're not going to get an accurate one, or nobody will ever completely maintain it. But it also is something that's currently not required on other prescriptions. It is not required upon people who purchase opioids to address their pain, or cancer medicines, which include painkillers, to do that. I don't believe that the thing really exists. If you say this language, would we have to withhold from selling to people from out of state with valid cards? And let's say the representation of what is valid is made by them. They provide what looks like a legal document anyway, and a legal driver's license, say a secondary source of identification to make sure that they are in fact the ones who have the card, marijuana card, and then they present that at the point of sale. So we do know that the card, let's say, matches the person. We can't tell, the dispensary cannot tell for sure, because there is no national system, not national database, that in fact they are licensed in that state. How would we solve that problem? It could be years away.
The state has specific regulations, and I'm trying to find that, but they have specific procedures that in place for how cards from out of state have to be dealt with in the electronic verification system, how they have to be entered, and what dispensaries have to do. What we're saying is that they have to use that electronic verification system. So if that electronic verification system is down and you can't verify a card, just like in many other states, you cannot make a sale at that time. So it's a partnership between the dispensary and the state regulating authority, and they are very clear in their regulations that they have the control over that state verification system. What we're mandating is that everyone has to use it.
I guess I want to sit back and hear some testimony first, Your Honor, before.
Well, let's hear from our guests.
People are
Please go
stepping
ahead,
up.
state your name. Yep.
Hi, excuse me, Vicki Higgins. There had been discussion of an affidavit being signed by either tourists or Nevada residents. To my knowledge, the state doesn't have a database
Not
for
yet.
dispensaries to check in. Will that be available when the applications are released?
I would imagine at that time, but they haven't gotten anything established quite yet.
Maybe in the
Sadly.
meantime, we could
So
go with
everything will come in time.
as Mr. Coffin said, yes, duplicate, copies can be made illegally, but as if we sign an affidavit, we are covering our own little bottoms, doing the best we can to verify until we get these other systems up. And
Thank you.
I think that would be a good way to verify. And speaking of tourists at that time, I understand no delivery within the city to tourists, but I still say we have a lot of patients that live within the city that really need delivery services, so please consider that. Thank you.
Well, and again, too, we're at the beginning stages, so, we're just trying to keep our arms around it, keep it tight, but all these suggestions, which I'm sure that possibly you brought up at one of the meetings, I know that we have kept notes on everything. So as we get through stage 1, go to 2, then we can pick up those pieces.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Your Honor.
Madam Mayor, Jennifer Solis, and for the record, the state does say that an affidavit to be signed by the cardholder until an electronic verification system has been enacted or adopted for statewide. So Ms. Higgins was correct. There is an affidavit process.
Well, that's good to know. Dan Lutz again. I had developed my own patient verification system for California. Its intent is to actually go for state to state. It just, there's nuances in every state, so we just have to make a profile for that state. It takes a couple of months to refine it for each state. I was going to suggest that you just, if I didn't know about the affidavit process, but that each state has a way of they do verification. In California, it's pretty much just checking with the doctor. And if they were just to, the individual dispensary was to log in patients that way and create basically a sign-in for that as something in between. But if there's an affidavit process, it would be good to use that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, again. And, excuse me, good afternoon, Mayor and council people.
Pardon us, we're nibbling on Cheez-Its while you go on.
What'd you say?
We're having Cheez-Its up here.
Okay, no problem.
If you don't mind.
Attorney Bruce Gale. I can't say it any better than Karen Huddleston said, and I think the Section F should remain. My recollection, it was either back in December of last year or February of this year when there was the public comment periods regarding proposed modifications to the regulations. This issue was specifically addressed regarding who has the obligation to maintain the electronic verification system. Because I think in the second draft of the regulations, there was the imposition that the medical marijuana establishments had the duty to maintain the electronic verification system. And Marla McDade Williams, the state's Division of Public and Behavioral Health, and I think the final draft of the regulations made it really clear that the state has the duty to maintain this the electronic verification system. So I think this section should stay as it is, and subsequently there's a subsequent provision which I'll address later that's kind of inconsistent with this, but this should stand as it is.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Harrison Gale again. The state does provide themselves some leeway in the event that their electronic verification system is not implemented in a timely fashion, and trying to unify 22 or more separate states' medical marijuana programs into one database will be quite challenging, and it could take some time. It might make sense, and I would recommend that you provide yourself similar leeway in this section and say that you must use the electronic verification system of the state provides if it's available, and if not, then we would have to rely on something like an affidavit system. Thank you.
Thank you. Proceed on.
Your Honor, I think maybe then what we could do is leave it alone, because there is a conditional, it's conditional, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but maintained by the state regulating authority may be the key words here, and that is that if it's not in existence, that it is assumed that when it does become in existence, it needs to be used. So in essence, it's not necessary to sell and have verification through the state system that doesn't exist. I want to make sure that it could take 2 years for them to do that right. And we've got people with a lot of investment, and they're trying to sell to people from out of state who present legitimate card and an identification card in addition to that. And I'm sorry, we can't sell, because we can't contact Connecticut or Washington or something else.
Yeah, or we can't verify.
So maybe if those words, if Val can verify that, in essence, leaving F as alone contains the leeway that I want, then I wouldn't mind leaving it alone.
Mayor Goodman? I don't know what the intent of F is, but the way it reads, it's either informational only, meaning you have to comply with what the state requires, or it just provides an independent basis of enforcing what the state requirements are, but doesn't go beyond that, so that if the state requires something that is not yet able to be used and instead accepts affidavits, or if the system isn't working on a particular day, a person is going to be either compliant or not compliant with the state, but not at odds with us, but not the state. In other words, we aren't requiring any more than what the state would require. I don't know if that helps.
Well, would that stop a sale? I mean, if the state ever gets a system?
I don't think we would.
And I think we'll never get a system that includes all the other states, but I could be wrong. So if on the day that a sale is transacting and they can't verify through the so-called state verification system, what do we do? Then what does the dispensary do? Nothing? I mean, they can sell? Is that what you're saying? Because it's
I
really not.
don't know how the state would deal with that, but I don't expect our people to go out citing something if they're not sure the state would have a problem with it. Flynn and Karen may respond otherwise, but I don't know that we would try and adopt a higher standard than what the state is doing.
I don't think we would want to in this area. But I want to make sure that we don't have confusion because either technical glitches,
Please.
foul it up.
While they respond?
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston, for the record again. The state regulations are very clear on how the state verification system will work. And on out-of-state cards, once you're presented with an out-of-state card, you have to enter that information into our state system so that it begins to track how much marijuana is dispensed to that card. So it would only be up to 2.5 ounces every 2 weeks, just like an in-state card would. So there are specific provisions for how out-of-state cards work. Most states, and I'm sure as our state gets up and working with this, they have assured us that they are issuing an RFP and will have that system in place in our meetings. Should it not, what happens most places is using the electronic verification system is not always computer to computer. Often, if it's down or you can't get reception, they have specific procedures in place where you make a telephone call, you contact the state agency, they take care and make sure it's properly entered into that system.
Your Honor, from hearing that really concerns me because if they're not even at the RFP stage, we don't want to.
And I'm sorry, I have not seen any information. They have, in the meetings, assured us that that is their responsibility and they are moving forward with it.
Okay, because I can tell you.
Nor do they have the personnel at this time. I mean, this is a big, big undertaking, and they are not well-staffed for it or funded for it at this point.
I think in some way or another, Your Honor, I think we have to allow it sold unless there is, in essence, something blocking it. And so go ahead and allow it. And the reason I say that is because we have to have some level of trust with the licensees who have been vetted. I mean, we've gone down to every percentage of ownership. So we know, and they know what the risk is. This is even stronger than gaming. There's going to be risk involved in selling improperly to people. So I'm inclined to think that we should go ahead and move ahead and allow sales. We won't have any sales for the 6 months, 8 months probably, but if we have that, we can't wait for the state. Your Honor, I have got too much experience with the state on their process of bidding, requesting bids, getting information requests, and then when they get the thing working, it doesn't work.
We
That
can
is just
establish
the
our
state.
own database. I mean, I think we have to have something. You're talking about research. It starts with tracking everything that we're doing. So if the state's slow, and we've gotten this far, and we have the input, then maybe we have to start on our own database until they're up and running. But I don't think they have the staff or the funding to go this direction within 6 or 8 months, as you said.
Oh, boy. I can see that as a problem. I know Majority
We have
Leader
something.
Horn is still here, hiding in the back row.
And we have,
But he has had the same experience that I have, and former Senator and Assemblywoman Tiffany have had with state state purchasing of computers, state trying to operate computers, and tossing them away one after another.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. Just have a
no,
quick...
name. Every
Timothy
time.
Otto,
Thank you.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Las Vegas group. And just before I start, I also like to say that June is PTSD Awareness Month. And I have just a question as we're moving along with the affidavits as far as signing and the 24-hour service. A scenario, as a medical patient, we have pretty much, where to say, have an EDS patients, which a lot of them come from Canada. And as I'm sure, there's at least about 40% of our tourism, population alone is coming from Canada, and I suppose that there is medical patients, and I do have friends too. So let's say their plane lands at 12, locally at 12 a.m., and they come in on life support. We have, our fluids, depending on which condition they're in, and they're very excited to be in Las Vegas. They know we have the best medical system establishment going on, and we have basically the best weather to accommodate, their condition or illnesses. This becomes a very serious problem because when that patient arrives, where do we pick it up from there? As far as you have, as far as with affidavits too, there has times in which it could be signed. So that was just my scenario. What if there's just out of business time and, and patients are still patients, they're still going to need their medication. It's not always cannabis too. Some of my friends, and even me personally, we don't use cannabis at 12, past 12 at night. I use, lots of different oils, and also just wanted to make one thing clear too. It is the cannabis itself, the flowers, the marijuana as it's called, it's an aromatic plant. I don't always use it, just if the smell alone produces its own medicinal benefits, which is known as terpenes and terpenoids. I hear complaints about the smell being a problem. Best believe, if I cannot afford cannabis and I cannot afford anything to be with it, I will drive close to a medical marijuana dispensary and I will sit there and I'm going to take a whiff. And that whiff, by taking that, I'm going to be able to get my terpenoids that I need in my body just to be able to help me through a little bit of time. I just wanted to make that clear because there are so many different ways to seeing this. So thank you.
Please.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Councilman. I was summoned here.
Okay, again, state your name,
So
please.
for some clarity, I guess, if you don't mind, Councilman, if you repeat exactly what your inquiry was on.
From your experience, and you passed this legislation requiring this database. And yet, I know, and we already know, that it doesn't exist yet and that the mechanics have not been enacted yet to create the database, to buy the equipment, to hire the people to input the data for the database. So we're going to be ready to sell, and the people are going to be wanting to come here and purchase, that is, legal people with a card from an out-of-state source. Now, naturally, hopefully they would have either passport and or driver's license, a couple of forms of identification, and an affidavit ought to be enough, I think, at the retail level. But is that contemplated as well in the statute? I think did you contemplate the state wouldn't have its computer database running in time because it never has?
I don't think, Councilman, the contemplation was not having the database in time for, by the time the selling of cannabis was going to take. I mean, we put it in statute to have that done, knowing that didn't have the software yet in place. From my work in this since the session, I know that there does exist this software. I think it comes down to the state determining which they're going to use in doing that. There certainly is an issue with the reciprocity portion of the statute and where it asks to provide an affidavit. But as council members are well aware that an affidavit is basically you're promising that you're telling the truth. That in itself is problematic. I come from another jurisdiction that allows me to smoke this, I promise.
Well, excuse
And
me,
so
if I
that's
can
why
interrupt
that-
you for just a second, Bill. Okay, but the affidavit is buttressed by the forms of identification which are required, which would be a passport and/or a couple of forms of state-issued identification. One of them is the card from the municipality, or from the jurisdiction, like, say, Connecticut. So you've got that, you've got Connecticut driver's license. They both have a visual image of the person. And then, you know, sure, there are going to be counterfeits. That is going to happen. But you can't have a perfect system. But anyway, so let's say you've got that and you get the affidavit. Why do you need to wait for the state? That's my point. Is I don't think the state's going to be ready, and we know the state will go down every now and then. It might go down on a terrible time when they don't have the people to fix it. So we could make our, this isn't the only section in this bill that talks about registry, but it is important for us to make sure we adhere to the intent of the legislation, but recognizing that we're dealing with human beings here and who need their medicines, and at the same time, in the normal course of events, in the pharmacy industry, there are workarounds that you can do with a few phone calls and a couple of faxes. But you can't do it if you're going to rely upon a Carson City-based registry, which happens to be linked up to Connecticut and 21 other states. So,
And I can appreciate that, Councilman. And in regards to on your first, everybody wants to make sure that patients are able to get this, but also we're not operating in a vacuum. We still have the federal issues in place, in which a lot of this stuff was taken into account when drafting legislation. And one of the things that the feds are looking for are a robust regulatory enforcement system in place. And so I think having an affidavit with an ID from a different jurisdiction that you can't back up, arguably is not, that by itself is not robust. Yes, I believe that any system can be breached and you can have your counterfeit provisions. But I think the state and the legislature was seeking, or is currently seeking, an additional mechanism to put in place with that ID that has your picture and the card that has an identification number and et cetera. But in those instances where you have somebody who's trying to obtain this product illegally with falsified documents, you have a system in place where you can put in the data and hopefully stop that type of activity.
Key word is hopefully,
day,
Bill. I'm going to interrupt you for just a second, please. If I may,
Yes.
I'm going to take the privilege of, we're not in the same building anymore, so I'm going to insult you by interrupting you. You can't get me again. If you really think that all 4,000 card holders in Clark County today holding state-issued marijuana cards are really needy patients, you know and I know that, well, we will be vulnerable to purchase other things like bridges. So it's highly likely that we have people here today who could provide 24 forms of identification that really don't need it, but they're doing it just to smoke it or just to take it. So let's face it, we have to get along with what's real out there. We do have a flaw in our own system that's incurable. It's really incurable. And so let's assume that all the other states, 21 other states, do have that same flaw. I am saying, yes, sometimes it happens. People will get through the net. Let's just make sure that we don't, kill ourselves in the process of trying to be perfect when perfection is not attainable.
And I agree with you, Councilman, but to the extent I think we're kind of talking past each other, I think the purpose of that is to have that robust regulatory framework in place so federal authorities don't focus in our state or in our community. I think the last thing that any of us want are the raids that we read about that are going on in other areas, because what a raid does when they raid a cultivation shop or a dispensary, whatever, because you don't have that robust regulatory framework, or those persons operating them are operating outside the law, those legitimate patients that are using those facilities are now out of their facility because it's been shut down. And so, yes, you're going to have the people who are going to get around the system. But I think the feds are going to be looking to see if the state is going to have that system in place to be able to do enforcement, to be able to catch as much as you can, as the city's going to have their particular regulatory systems in place or ordinances to have that, as they've said multiple times, a robust regulatory framework. And I don't think it's designed to have, zero, prevent, any type of illegal activity, Councilman. I think it's there for us to show the feds we're doing everything that we can to have medicinal marijuana operate to the best of its ability in our jurisdiction.
And I agree with you.
Well, thank you for that answer, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I think we should be robust, and I think we really do it right. And in fact, if it's not up, we'll work through that as we get there. But the
All
key
right.
is for as much pressure upon the state to go ahead and put this database
Or
up.
give us
And I'm
permission to
confident-
operate until they get
Right,
it done.
right.
And I am confident that there will be a system up, and that said, there are going to be glitches and bugs and as
Of
any
course.
other new type of thing you put in place. But I'm confident that they'll get a system up in place by the time the first stores open.
I promise
Well,
to
and
be
if not, it will
optimistic.
be shortly thereafter, but we'll have a way to handle it until that time comes. But this would be more fail-safe than anything else.
Thank you for
So
your
it's good.
testimony,
And I
really.
have to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take a recess.
Yeah. Oh, please.
As long as Mr. Horn is still in the building.
Good afternoon.
Just a minute. Judge Horn, if you're still in the building, just remember, when you're elected, I promise to show you more respect. Sit down, please, because you may be needed again. Thank you very much, Your Honor, for letting me
I
talk to him that
I
way.
hope you hold him in contempt.
I'm a contemptible person, for sure.
Yes, please, go ahead, and again, your name.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council members, my name's Dan Rush. I'm the Director of the Cannabis Workers Rising Campaign for the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union. And we currently represent thousands of medical cannabis workers across the country. I've been working on the topic for some years now, and I've read the Cole Memo robustly. They don't talk about qualification or threshold being robust. They do talk about robust enforcement. There's a difference between qualification and enforcement, and I just thought I'd bring that up. And also, there are states like California that don't have mandatory card programs, and so there's approximately 1 million patients in California that don't have a state card. They only have a medical recommendation from a physician. Thank you.
Thank you, that's interesting. Okay, proceed on, please, Councilman Coffin.
Okay, Your Honor, it's obvious we're not going to finish this today. At the same time, I don't want to inhibit the process. I know that Councilman Anthony has to go at 1, and I think that, I don't know your schedule. I blocked out the whole day for this, but the trouble is, you could never anticipate that chairing a committee like this. The more we do today, the less we do on Wednesday. But it means we should move forward, whatever we have not discussed, to Wednesday, and just go ahead and at
Okay.
least save the council, full council, some time.
Good.
If we can get decisions made today that we could then tell the council we agree with to move forward, if it would save you time when you're chairing things on
I
Wednesday.
think that would be very helpful.
'Cause I don't think we should operate with just
So
two
let's
people.
just get through as much as we can. We've got 22 minutes, so mush on.
So we, skipping.
Your
permit
phone's
application.
not on. You're not lit up. You are lit.
Skipping permit application. I don't know if there's any testimony on any of those. There's a lot of stuff there. When you get to advertising, pages 6 and 7, security plan, there's things like that. We probably ought to have some public
Okay,
comment on.
we have- Okay, please.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. I do have Attorney Bruce Gale, I do have a comment regarding the permanent application section, specifically subsection B. I would like that 3 o'clock deadline to be amended to 5 o'clock. On Tuesday, April 22nd, which is the deadline at the county to submit the preliminary review forms, the 2 hours can make a big difference. You know, you're rushing to get this done last minute, and I think it would be more accommodating to the applicants if this was changed to 5 p.m.
Can I address that? We already
Can we
heard
hear
from-
from, all right, but I was going to ask from Ms. Dubbleston on that.
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager. The 3 p.m. was to be in the Development Service Center and having pulled a ticket. We anticipate exactly what Mr. Gale said is the rush at the end, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate everyone by the close of business. So we would ask that they be there, they pull their ticket. We know that everyone's going to have to wait, but it will take us considerable time to work with an applicant to get everything taken in and exchanged. We only have so much staff, so if we can get everybody there at 3, then we can get them out of there by 5:30.
Okay, so that'll stand, 3. Send somebody in for you while you're working.
Thank you.
Jennifer Solis, Madam Mayor, through you to the City Council. We were talking about advertising and getting on to the advertising. I'm on page 12.
Can you cite which item you're on, please?
Page 13, item 4. Item 4 says that it's prohibited to advertise on any video, radio, or broadcast medium available to the general public, and that you go on later and say that you can use online media. I have an AM radio show, Nevada Cannabis News, on Tuesday between 4 and 5, and currently I'm anticipating letting people advertise on our radio show. It's a talk radio show. It's not, yahoos out there. And I'm also simulcast online. So you're prohibiting me from advertising or for letting people advertise on my radio show, but then I can simulcast it online and put in those ads? Or can you guys just strike the part where it says radio?
Ms. Duddleston?
This is a issue for the City Council, and what do you want to see and hear in your community? What we have tried to do was listen very careful to the suggestions and advice from the federal level as well as from the state, and in meeting with other states in particular. Many do not allow advertising at all. It is, at what point do you cross the line from providing a pharmaceutical service to an individual to promoting the use of medical marijuana or encouraging that? That is the issue. What we have tried to do is look around at what's been successful, both in speaking with the industry and in speaking with communities that have these businesses in their community, and tried to find that line. Is that online advertising, magazines, print media, those sorts of things are not something that is readily in front of children in the right of way, those sorts of things on TV. So that is the line that we have struck. So in this particular question, yes, if it was going out over an AM radio, you would not specifically have advertisements for specific venues or products. However, if it was online, it would be fine.
Well, I would venture to say that AM radio is not well listened to by many children, and it's an AM talk radio show. It's not an FM station. It's not something that normally people turn on. It's talk radio on AM station. That's not something that even the general public really, how many people here listen to AM radio? Not a lot, probably.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, and generally those people tend to be over 40.
Well, that could be something that comes before council.
I looked at the FCC guidelines, and there's nothing against FCC guidelines for advertising on AM radio.
Okay. Well, you
Thank
might
you.
bring that up at council when we meet going forward.
Good afternoon, Frank Hawkins again. I tend to agree with the young lady's comments, because here it says in the ordinance, anywhere where advertisement is visible to members of the public. So I can understand number 3. Originally, I was thinking that should be deleted, but I understand. But number 4, I think should be moved down into the section that's allowable, and maybe it would fit in number 2, since we don't have a number 2 there.
No.
You're welcome.
Good point.
People stayed up late, but what was missing there?
Yeah, but they would pull something back. Thank you.
Let me ask a question before Bruce steps up to testify. Oh, stay there, Bruce. It's just, you're next. But the idea was, has this been tested? Any of those municipalities that have tried to restrict advertising? Has this actually been tested? Because surely there'll be lawsuits. I was thinking Jim Rogers at Channel 3, the second he sees you can't advertise, he gets pretty upset, and he takes it and he'll run it for free if in essence it means he can win a lawsuit, and he might do that. So what do we do?
As we understand the state regulations, every piece of any type of advertising or an advertising plan has to be approved by the state regulating authority. In this case, all of these, as well as a variety of others that we advertised, were pulled directly out of other municipal codes in California, Arizona, and Colorado. From meeting with many of the dispensaries in Colorado, they are not allowed to advertise at all, except
I know
online.
one thing, if I could just continue this, Mayor. The state of Nevada has successfully limited advertising on gaming by saying you cannot advertise that you will win. But there's all kinds of puffery and advertising about what a good time you're going to have, and you might win, even though we know most are going to lose. So that apparently must have been tested at one time or another, but then again, maybe not, because there's a license there that these casinos, they bow and scrape when the commission or the control board say, you will not advertise that you can win, and or you cannot show live gaming. Probably nobody's ever taken it to court, be my guess, but you know, this would require some caucusing with our legal counsel to double check and see if there's any challenges out there moving forward. I would say I agree with this because I don't want children to see this, but I don't quite know how to address it.
Your Honor, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing. This that you are looking at has been reviewed by our outside counsel in Colorado.
Oh,
That would help. Yeah, that's a good idea.
yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I want to refer back to a prior section that was somewhat skipped, and this is section 6.95.050. I'm sorry, strike that. 6.95, yes, 090, titled Medical Marijuana Establishment Licenses. Subsection B reads, the city council may issue licenses for the following types of medical marijuana establishments. Number one, medical marijuana dispensary. The last language regarding, it says, exclusively to state regulating authority designated medical marijuana registry card holders. So if you read this language literally, a medical marijuana dispensary licensed in the city of Las Vegas can only sell to, and also for the record, I printed out from your website this morning the proposed regulations that had a date of May 12, 2014 on the bottom, and the ones today that are over there that I picked up have a date of May 28. There are some minor revisions. So I don't know if you're looking at the one that says May 28, 2014.
June 2.
Your Honor, the June 2 one that you have has, the only difference is the yellow highlighting. I highlighted the yellow items. They're exactly the same, what the audience has, what we handed out, and what you have. The only reason the date was changed is I wanted to go through and highlight for you all.
You're speaking 6959090 and B2?
B1.
B1, okay.
As I commented earlier when we were going through the unlawful acts, there were, under subsection F, the language regarding, the verification system. There's, the language is a little different, but I'm going to assume, and maybe we should explore this, exclusively the state, that is the state of Nevada, not some other jurisdiction, okay? And again, the way this is read, you can own medical marijuana dispensary in the city of Las Vegas can only sell to residents of Nevada who have a medical marijuana registry card. Number two, as UFCW's Dan Rush commented earlier, out of the 22 jurisdictions of the District of Columbia, they have different systems. Some jurisdictions, they don't have medical marijuana cards like California. They have documentation. and that's obviously what we have.
That'll
We have one
come
for every
later
step.
on, I'm sure, I mean, again, we're starting at the beginning and trying to work through this, so as that becomes available and as part of the discussion, things I'm sure will grow and change.
So unless it was the intent of the city council that you're only going to sell to residents, I think this language should be...
Well, it says registry card holders, so those could be out of state that are in the database. Ms. Duddleston, please.
Yes, Your Honor, that definition is basically out of the state law. The only change in there between the state, which says acquires, possesses, it sells or dispenses marijuana or related supplies and educational materials to holders of a valid registration identification card, was to add the state regulating authority designated medical marijuana registration cards, because that's who we had defined as the authority of the state cards. I believe it has this same intent. Who is a card holder? And if you read the state law, it says that out-of-state cards shall be considered in-state cards in that database.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Frank Hawkins again, 6.95.110, page 13. Number 4, advertising. The states is purely incidental to sponsorship of a charitable event by a medical marijuana establishment. That's typically done for youth, or youth will be involved or may see a flyer or in a brochure. So just to address the youth issue. And then I guess 2 statements, I think, questions. Number H, so at this time in the ordinance, I don't think the city is going to address delivery service by a dispensary, which is okay. That's what I meant. I just want to make sure that's clear for the record. And then I, as it relates to renewal and getting a building permit, I understand that's being worked on. So these will come back at a later date, just point of
I
clarification.
would think so, and the delivery for sure, correct? Ms. Duddleston, delivery is not part of anything at this point.
Not at this point. We're trying to get our regulations in place, get everyone up and running. If that's something the council wants to address at a future time, once we understand what the regulations truly are from the state, we would bring that back.
Thank you.
Mayor, Jim DeFiore, 8550 West Charleston Boulevard. I have a letter to submit that I prepared last week with my concerns on the bill itself, and if I could have this submitted on the record. And very quickly, in the permit application contents, the requirement on page 7M is a $500,000 surety bond. My client has an insurance agent that has researched this and has contacted 6 local bonding companies here in Southern Nevada, and they will not issue a bond for $500,000. The highest that they will go would be $50,000. He also contacted other outside...
Excuse me, I did get your letter. That was the Aniello Agency?
The Aniello Agency,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay.
And
you're waiting for other agencies to let you know?
He's also contacted other agencies outside the state of Nevada, and the highest bond that they will write will be $50,000. So I'm concerned that we're creating a provision in the code that may not be able to, the dispensaries may not be able to comply with. Very quickly, the other concerns I have, the allowance of drug paraphernalia in a dispensary limited to an area. The language, I have no issues with that at all, but I had a concern, which Ms. Duddleston might have corrected earlier in her conversation, but 10.92010 makes it unlawful for a person to sell or possess with the intent to sell drug paraphernalia. So there's a little bit of conflict in the police code of Title 10 versus what we are proposing here in Title 6.
It's good to make note of, just to...
And we tried to clarify that in today's version. We'll work with the city attorney if there's other clarifications in other pieces of the code well before any of these places would be ready to open.
Thank you.
And the last item I have is the $75,000 annual fee for a dispensary. Have no concerns or issues with the way it's based on gross. but the $75,000 annual fee, and it's my understanding that the fees have to include enforcement costs. In my letter that I've submitted on record, I've provided an analysis of what enforcement costs would be for one facility, once a week, 1 hour by a licensed officer, based upon the annual salary of each of the licensed officers that do enforcement. And the total cost for annually would be about $33,000 if it was one dispensary per week for 52 weeks. So I'm concerned about the exorbitant cost of that annual flat fee and how it was ascertained that that would be the amount that we would be charged.
Thank
So
you.
those are my concerns.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report, which we'll pass on.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask also that something else be put in the record. So I've got a memo from Frank Hawkins here on concerns that Frank had. I want to put this in the record too. Thank you very
There
much,
you go.
Kirk. I want to make sure that, because we're going to truncate this hearing and that we're going to go to full council with the bill, that it's understood that we have some understanding of the issues now. I don't know if we're all in agreement up here, though, but we certainly know how to address the issue more and thoroughly, and we're going to have a long meeting. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say, even though this is item 33, it's going to take all day probably.
And we'll probably put that towards the end, too.
Yeah. Are we allowed to do that?
Can we do that, or?
No, ma'am, it was scheduled directly in the order of the agenda. There was no notice that would be
Is
carried.
it before lunch, after lunch?
Excuse me?
There's no lunch break.
There's no lunch break?
No, this is the short meeting of the month, and
Okay.
it runs straight through. There's
Okay.
only 2 or 3 items
I'm
after
going to order room
that
service.
bill.
Can I order room service?
I'm certain we can handle that.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not saying the mayor can't trail it to the end of the business.
No, sir, it just wasn't
Right.
noticed to that effect, correct.
Okay. But I think that's going to be inevitable.
Well, and to me, I think that's something that needs to be done so that
Yeah.
those, people that are here, rather than have you sit around all day long.
It's a problem. There have been a lot of public hearings. I'm just editorializing, Your Honor, but we're about ready to wind up. I just want to give these folks a chance to
Okay.
testify. But the idea is that there were a lot of public meetings, but there never were the kind of meetings where members of the council could actually sit, ask questions, deliberate,
Right.
debate,
Well, and I
to help
think too,
sleuths.
staff was more on the recipient end and trying not to make comments back, but to listen and get all the input from the public that we needed, which has been done. Please come forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilmen. My name is Derek Cole, Risk Manager of Capstone Brokerage. And really quick, on page 11 on the insurance requirements, Section G, such surety bond shall be in the amount of $500,000. We do have multiple admitted state of Nevada carriers that will write this $500,000 bond for the dispensaries or for any part of the medical marijuana establishments. As long as they have the correct financial backing on that and paperwork, that can be written.
Great.
So, yep.
Thank
We
you.
have that. Thank you.
Hi, Harrison Gale again. I just wanted to first thank the staff, Flynn and Karen and everyone over there, for the tremendous improvements that have been made over the course of iterations of these licensing regulations. I think right now we have a really great draft of documents that will serve the patients of Nevada. The only concern that I'd like to voice that we just touched on briefly is the delivery, subsection H of section 110 and 150. I think that the patients...
What page are you on?
That would be page 13H, disallowing delivery in the city of Las Vegas. As far as I know, there's been no mention of disallowing delivery in the county. So there might be an issue between municipalities if one were to allow it and one were not. But more importantly, the patients that are most in need of medical marijuana oftentimes are unable to drive themselves to a dispensary to go get it. I think that to best serve them without overburdening caregivers, if a patient has been verified as a medical marijuana patient here in the state of Nevada, they should be allowed to receive deliveries from dispensaries. But
I do think, Harrison, Mr. Gale, I do think in time that probably will be something that will be considered, but again, we're crawling before we're walking and running.
Understood.
So,
Thank you. Just wanted to
thanks.
issue.
Good afternoon once again, Madam Mayor and City Council. I just have a proposal. I'm not sure. which is on page 19, section 6.95.150, subsection C, number 3. And I'll read it as it's read. Should not be used by women.
What was the number again?
I'm sorry, okay.
You're on page 19?
Page 19, 6.95.150, subsection C,
Thank you.
number 3. And it reads, should not be used by women who are pregnant or breastfeeding. Wow. I just had one comment for that, and I would just like to say that the first time I ever tried cannabis, I wasn't the one that tried it. My mom gave it to me through her breast milk. I'm not sure. And because the breast milk does contain cannabinoids. I would like the city and the mayor, the staff to please take this matters very seriously and not restrict anyone who severely needs it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Sharon Beasley, I'm going to jump to page, I believe it's 26, 6.95.230, cultivation limit. My question is, cultivation limit, 6.95.230, page 26. It says, council may enter in agreements with other local governments to restrict cultivation to a regional location or a regional limit based on square footage of building. My question is there a time frame when this limitation may occur? I am a commercial broker and I represent applicants, and I hate to waste anybody's time out there looking for properties if there's going to be a limitation within the city.
Ms. Duddleston, can we answer that, please?
Your Honor, under the state law and regulations, the state may limit cultivation on a statewide basis. This is just a means to give the council the notice that at some point in the future that they may want to work with other local governments should there be concerns about the amount of cultivation or the location of cultivation within the urban area of the local governments.
Okay, and then I guess I'm asking the recommendation committee, do you see this being limited prior to the applications being submitted to the city? Do you see that as that could happen?
No.
Okay. Because I just don't want my clients and myself to be out there looking for properties and wasting our time.
There's a little risk involved in all of this, Your Honor. A little risk, I've talked to you before.
Oh, yeah, sure, there's risk in
just a little risk
anything.
involved, and sometimes you just can't help it. But then, of course, you already tell people, I don't guarantee that this will be available.
Well, absolutely.
Right, so I don't think you have a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, sir.
Hello, I'm Bill Rigdon from Building Consensus. We do security work for medical marijuana projects, hospitals, businesses. Reading through your security numbers here and letters, I don't think that you're addressing the fact that you could really cut down the cost of Metro's involvement, security involvement, if you had bulletproofing and separate areas that people go into and really watch, not only with cameras, but watch who's going in under behind a safe curtain. So I think some fortification should be addressed in this through the building department.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
I just want to thank the city council and all their staff for all their work. Been a long haul, made a lot of progress since the first recommending committee back in September of last year. So I don't have that's my comment.
Good luck in your campaign. Yes?
Hi, Vicki Higgins. I just want to point out there are many, many, many jobs waiting to be had, so the sooner we get this accomplished, the better. On the note of law enforcement, again, we're required to get a work card on 6.95.120B, D, and the next one is 6.951.50J, and then 6.95.210C. They involve police department with our businesses fully, and I do not feel it's unreasonable to ask that our departments be trained. In 6.95.210C, they talk about the dispensary aggravating crime or creating unduly difficult law enforcement in the area. This, to me, tells me that the police department will have the decisions whether or not we're creating them more work or, you know, it could cause some potential problems down the road, I would see. And I'd like to remind you again, the fees, that the high fees are going to come down to the patients. The rent is too damn high. So work with us. We just want to get to work and get going on this. We
wanna
thank
do
you
it
for your
right.
efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. William Horn, for the record, on that issue on the cultivation limits. I just would like to say that putting the limits and thinking just in jurisdictional for Southern Nevada, I think would be a mistake in that you could have a cultivator who has a unique strain that is sought out throughout the state, and that cultivator may want to transport to Washoe County or any other place that, you know, within the state that's seeking that particular strain. To put such limits on just because of the demand here in the local vicinity, I think would be short-sighted and would have a direct impact to the amount of revenue that would be attained through the city in doing that. So I say allow these entrepreneurs to, you know, if they're successful in growing unique strains that are sought after, I think we should allow them to do that and let the marketplace make the changes that are necessary. Those who are successful will flourish, and those who are not will fall by the wayside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what we're going to do now is, what do we do now? We're going to take this on to, pardon?
I have an idea.
Okay, one last comment.
Hi, Mike Higgins. I just had a couple quick things. Page 19, Section F, on the number 1, giving away free samples or free product to any person or employee or customer. I believe the state has something in its regulations about the compassionate care for indigent patients, veterans, helping them out with free medicine. And they give some merit base to that in your application, I think, as well. So the free product to any person, you know, if you have an indigent patient or a veteran or somebody with PTSD that can't afford their medicine, I feel that they should be able to get free medicine from the dispensary.
Okay.
And the other thing is, in that same section F, number 4, no novelty items, merchandise, or products may be allowed to have any logo or business name to be used on such merchandise. Well, we are a tourist town, and a lot of people like to take home a T-shirt or a coffee mug. So I would like to strike that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any last comment? Okay, because I think, right, last witness, and we'll close public comment, and move forward, and then see you Wednesday, where the item will be trailed.
Hi, Dan Lutz again. I have a few things I went through and read the whole thing, so I collected a few of them here. So on section, page 17, 6.95.140, basically on B, where it talks about number 1, no infused products may contain alcoholic beverages. Some tinctures are made using an alcohol extraction method. So it would be, if there's a way of defining that you can still use alcohol-based tinctures, they're done in drops, so no one's going to get drunk.
Are you talking about a trace of alcohol remaining after the?
There can be, yeah. It just depends on the process, you know. And then on number 3, no infused water or beverages may be produced or bottled for drinking as a beverage. I don't really have a problem in general about infused drinks, but one of the things that's happening is there's a lot of evidence that just the juice from the green leaf, which is a non-euphoric way of consuming the medicine, and some people require like 1,000 leaves in a day for their ailment, and to juice that if we were able to, we don't know if we could do freeze drying of it or anything, if that would actually destroy the particular cannabinoids. But again, it's not euphoric. Actually could be consumed at any point, and they're not going to, it's just like you wouldn't get anything more than as from like a wheatgrass shot. But that, it would be very important to make some exception for the juice from the plant. Next was the, on the dosage, which is on section 9, the next page, limiting the dosage. Some people really require a larger dosage, and we found in producing the edibles that some require really small amounts, some require much larger ones, but the cost of production of the edible takes up a significant cost of the overall product. So they'd actually have to spend more to get more of a dosage. Instead of buying one edible, they could buy 2.
I think we're erring on the side of caution to start. We can always change, move forward.
Okay. And on page 19, section F, we're basically about free samples and things of that. I don't really have too much of a problem giving free samples, but not giving free samples, but there are certain patients that you may want to give it to them for free because they are end of life and they don't have the money anymore. So if there's some provisions for those patients for those things, I'm not exactly. And then on number 3, reward programs, loyalty programs, I'm not exactly sure why there is some opposition to having loyalty programs. The system that I was referring to earlier, the software-based system, which tracks the patients, it also tracks their purchases, which also allows them to give comments and on the particular strains and how they did with that strain. And if they are able to, if they do that, they're rewarded, they're given points. So those points are redeemable for other products. So if it's a tax-related issue where they're...
Again, in time, that may happen, but I think up front what we're trying to do is do this cautiously, do it well.
Okay.
And these are all suggestions which I know Mr. Fagan, Ms. Duddleston have been taking under advisement, trying to comply
Well,
with state.
that's all of them. So, but thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing now, and what we will do...
I have a motion for you.
Okay, you will make your motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, to make sure people in the audience know, I don't even know if this is broadcast on the internet, or I doubt that it is, but it may be. But we just let people know that I will be moving to forward this bill as written to the full council with no recommendation. And the reason, sometimes that's kind of like you couldn't decide what you want to do, or it has a negative comment, but I believe that's probably the proper motion because
Well, and two, because we haven't completed it.
Yeah, we haven't completed it, and one of our members is already missing. And I think that a lot of changes are going to take place between now and Wednesday, but it may not be all that would satisfy others, but some of us are going to have to get together with staff and do some rewriting. And I think those of you who are here are welcome to call me and or come up to the office and talk about them, and we'll make room for you. I think I'm pretty good this afternoon. I was just looking at my schedule. I think it'll work out.
So this is your motion to move it to
move
council?
forward to council with no recommendation.
We're frozen. There it is. Please vote on it and post. Thank you. That motion carries. So we will move on to agenda item 7, citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward, give your name for the record, the amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close that. And we will, did I skip a page, or do we now adjourn? Yes. Thank you all, and thank you, staff, for admirable work over these months. Thank you. Thank you.